What's up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of The Imagination, where I'm continuing my Survivor series. And I'm here today with Elizabeth Harding Weinstein, that I am so honored to introduce you guys to today. I found her through social media. I had people sending me her content, reposting it, and I'm thinking, who is this woman? She's speaking on so many different issues, from pedophilia to child abuse. And come to find out, she's a survivor herself of being married to a pedophile for many, many years. And now she's kind of in a fight to get her children back from perpetrators. So without further ado, Lizzie, thank you so much for being here with me today. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me, Emma. I'm so grateful to be here. I really appreciate any opportunity to share the story with people and try and educate people so they don't suffer the same plight that I've had to go through. And so many other mothers and fathers, unfortunately.
Every survivor that I follow that I actually get to meet, I feel like how most people would, probably meeting a celebrity or somebody they admire. It's just, your bravery is so inspiring to me. And I think people listening are going to feel so inspired to start speaking up, thinking, if she can do all this waiting and throwing punches, what's my excuse? So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your story. Your story has so many different aspects of it. And I know we were talking beforehand about possibly doing a few episodes. So for people listening, get excited, because this won't be the last time that you hear from Lizzie. But I would love if you could just give us some background and context of your story, because man, it's really crazy what you're going through and what you've gone through, where you're at.
Yeah, it's somewhat unbelievable, except for the fact that I put all the evidence out there. And that's what I want people to do, is not believe me, not just listen to my story. I would really love for people to look at the evidence of what's happening and see for yourself. We are currently living in a world where our judges across, it's not even in our country, just across the world, are able to act tyrannically towards citizens, defile us, desecrate our rights, and you really have very, very little recourse. So a summation of my story is this. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 17 and a half years. Before that, I had went to Columbia University. I was a graduate of their nursing program there. I went for my nurse practitioner, but didn't finish. And I was at the time working, I had been an ER ICU nurse, and then I was working in hospital administrations and running a private, the Northeast division of a private hospitalist company, which was fantastic. But then I had my babies, I stayed home. I married a man whose name is Brian Stryker Weinstein. I always thought he was a good and loving and kind man. And I'm sure if you had first met him, you would think so too. He's a Duke AB scholar. He's on the board of Duke University for their ethics board, of all things. Went to Yale Law School, and he's a partner at Davis Polk and Wardwell. Now, my husband had a lifelong history of pedophilia. He was, his molester was a vice principal at a school by the name of Ron Barry. Ron Barry had Barry's Boys, where he would take troubled boys away on weekend trips with him. He was a known alcoholic, had been to AA many times, was always hired back as vice principal of Syosset High School, and he would take these troubled boys away on weekend trips with him, get them drunk with other men, and climb into bed with them. So I knew that my husband had this history in his past. I knew that my husband's sister was also molested by a teacher in their school, and that Brian's parents were very nonchalant about the whole thing and dismissive about it, which never quite made sense to me. And, there were signs that something was wrong throughout my marriage, but I always attributed these types of things to my husband having Stockholm syndrome. So I knew that my husband kept a loving relationship with his pedophile abuser. He spoke at the man's retirement party. After identifying that man, Ronald Barry, as a pedophile, he spoke at the man's retirement party as the keynote speaker, as one of the greatest men that ever existed. He kept the man's letters for years. He just exalted this guy. And so that alone should have given me pause. But instead, I just thought, oh, my poor husband, like, he just has Stockholm syndrome and he doesn't know that, he's still a victim of that man. And so then when red flags would pop up in our family, like he would walk in on my children in the shower, he would walk around the house with his boxers and his penis falling out. And I would say, don't go in the children's room, they're getting changed. And he would go in his boxers, and I would pull him back and be like, what are you doing? Right? What are you doing? But in my mind, again, you don't think the man that I'm having sex with is getting sexual gratification from children. You stop and think, oh, he was abused as a kid, and therefore he has Stockholm syndrome. So he just doesn't know that this is wrong. Okay, well, that's true, but that's not the whole truth, right? And so when my son started throwing up, when my husband would come home from work and he would start asking to have private conversations with me, and my husband would storm into the room and stand there like this and be like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I get to hear what you're talking about. And I'd be like, dude, get out. We're having a talk. He wants to talk to me. He's been upset all day. I don't know why he's upset. Get out. And he's like, nope, my son, I get to know what you're talking about. Like, all of these things should have fucking gelled in my mind that there was a problem there. But your brain doesn't go there. You create this separate world. Like, I didn't ask the question. That's the thing. I didn't consider it. And what's interesting about me is that I was molested by my father. I go and I get a list of all the sexual predators in the area before I move to a house. I've done it since college. Like, and so when we moved to this place called Briarcliff, Sing Sing prison is right up the road. So when I get the list of sexual abusers, like, it was 150 pages, sorry. It was 150 pages, and it was terrifying. But that's the type of person I was. And so in your mind, you also have this false sense of security. Like, well, I was abused and I know what abuse is, and therefore you can't fool me. But pedophiles consider the adults to be just as much of a conquest as the children. There's an article called In Plain View by it's about Jerry Sandusky by Malcolm Gladwell, who's a famous writer. He did Outliers, he did Tipping Point, talking about the 10,000 hours, like the difference between when you become expert at something. And so anyways, he wrote the story highlighting Jerry Sandusky and how they get away with it for so long, right? Like, this idea of them not only grooming the children to find out which ones they can molest and which ones they couldn't, but grooming the adults to find out which ones would be tolerant and which ones wouldn't, right? And so because I never fully confronted the issue with my father until much later in life, you marry what you know. So I think I married somebody totally different than my father. And instead, I just married a smarter, sneakier, more deceptive version of him. And I was just as much of a conquest for Brian as our children and the other children that he's been involved with. So anyway, so let me fast forward. We're married for 18 years. COVID is going on. He's living at home. I'm very heavily, as somebody who has a healthcare background, advocating to get rid of the shelter-in-place orders. I understand, like, just the horrific circumstances and the human rights atrocities that it's creating for people who have been abused to be locked in the home with their abuser. And I start reading more and more and more about this issue of pedophilia and about abusive homes, and everything starts to click. I then find content on my husband's iPad, which shows that he's been on these online pedophilia sites. And so I confront him. My children and I, we sit down with him and we confront him. And we say to him, we know you've been indoctrinated. This is all of our evidence. He comes back and says, yes, I want it to stop. No, I don't want to hurt you anymore. It wasn't like a complete airing of grievances, but it was like such a good first step. And I really believed him when he said, like, no, I don't want this to happen anymore. I really believed him. But then after that conversation, he then was trying to trap my kids separately in different parts of the house. And so then all my spidey senses went up and I got really nervous, and I was like, Brian, you're not safe and you're lying to us again, and you need to leave the house. And he refused to leave, and he went downstairs instead and slept downstairs. So we all go to bed. And about 4 a.m, I wake up with a massive pit in my stomach. Now, my husband, starting in 2013, had started very heavily gaslighting me. This is when I found out my children were on this website called Movie Star Planet, and it's a pedophile phishing website. And it's supposed to be a kid's play space, but it actually has these private chat rooms where it encourages children to give their personal and private information. And the more personal and private information you give, including videos, you can upload videos and everything, you get more movie star points. And then you become more famous in this private website, which means nothing, but means something to children, you understand. And it's actually linked, believe it or not, to the international organization Save the Children. So the guy who was the head of internet security at the international program Save the Children, the International Child Refugee Program Save the Children, is the founder of Movie Star Planet, which is a pedophile phishing website.
Oh man.
So I found out about all of this, and our children were on this website at school. And I started heavily advocating against this website, including going to speak with the Federal Trade Commission down in DC and the FBI, the Child Protective Service Unit of the FBI, to try and get them to shut this website down, because this website breaks all kinds of our laws, including it's called COPPA, the Child Online Privacy and Protected Act laws, right? So I started heavily advocating against this, and my husband freaked out. And again, remember, I don't know that he's a pedophile at this point. I just think that he's got Stockholm syndrome. So
Now,
he's starting.
Did he abuse them before you started putting these pieces together, or no? Was it was dormant inside of him?
No. I think around 2011, 2012 is when I think he first started abusing our kids. Like I said, I saw him grooming the kids, but I didn't make it make sense in my mind to be grooming. I was like, oh, he's just a man that was molested as a kid and doesn't know that he shouldn't be naked around children who don't want him to be naked. And like, it's stupid. It's stupid. It's stupid. As an educated mom, I look back and I want to fucking cry for the ways that I feel like I failed my kids. I failed to protect them. Okay. But you don't know what you don't know. And hindsight is 20/20, right? So anyways, 2013, I started heavily advocating against pedophilia. I started heavily, purposely advocating against this one website. And my husband freaks the fuck out. And he starts accusing me of being bipolar. He starts saying he needs me to go see somebody. And I'm like, bipolar? What are you talking about? Like, I'm never depressed. I'm always the same person. I'm always happy. I'm always loud. I'm always late. I'm always a loud advocate. Like, what are you talking about? You sound stupid, right? So anyways, he then kind of manipulated me and was like, you know what? I really need help. And I need you to come with me because I need help. So please, Lizzie, like, please, won't you come with me? And I was at the time, like, I was writing him letters, like, you're gaslighting me. Why are you gaslighting me, Brian? You're gaslighting me because you're afraid to face your own abuse. This is ridiculous. But again, like, even then I should have jumped to, wait a minute, maybe he's actually trying to hurt you. Maybe you're onto something here. But that is just how much I was snowed by this man. I didn't at all consider the possibility that anything nefarious was going on. So anyways, that happens in 2013. 2020 happens. I put all the pieces together. We confront my husband. He then leaves the house the next day, storms out of the house, and instantly tries to take me against my will. He colludes with this man who was our marriage counselor. His name is Jeffrey Dyke. He is a psychologist who calls himself Dr. Dyke because he has a PhD, but he's not a doctor, right? So this Dr. Dyke and my husband, after I confront my husband with his pedophilia, and there's a video of that, by the way. There's a video of me waking up at 4 a.m. and going downstairs and talking about it. The full video isn't on my Instagram page because it only allowed me to post a certain amount of time, but on Facebook it's there. I think it's around November 17th or 18th. It's there. But anyway, so I go downstairs, I confront my husband. He leaves the next day. He gets involved instantly because I have his iPad and there are text messages between him and this guidance counselor about this marriage counselor about how they're going to take me against my will. They're going to call the police. And even though they acknowledge that I'm can articulate myself clearly, I'm not a threat to myself or others, I should just trust them and go in for inpatient psychiatric admission for a few days. Because I trust them, because they're such good people and they're just trying to help me. I mean, it's fucking bullshit, right? So I have all this in writing. Brian then fires the marriage counselor. I fire the marriage counselor. I say, don't ever contact us again. I see that you're working nefariously to protect pedophiles, Jeff Dyke. And that's really interesting to me. This is your business. I now see that. Brian, I believe in you. Do you understand what you just did was so fucking dangerous? And do you want to get better? He says, yes, I do. I say, great. And again, I have all these texts. They're all online. So then I go and I meet my husband that night and we go through, we're talking about all of this stuff with Jeffrey Dyke, and my husband starts backpedaling and gaslighting again. And again, that video is all online. And I basically say, like, you can't fool us anymore. You can't hurt us anymore. He stays missing for 2 weeks. He tries one more time to have me taken against my will. He signs a contract with somebody to kidnap me and falsely admit me to a psychiatric unit, right? He sends them messages of all the places to take me, all these psychiatric hospitals to take me, using my name and using the name of this doctor that he falsely paid for in 2013 to try and give me a false diagnosis, right? And signs contracts with these people, sends emails back and forth talking about where to take me, and then puts the payment for their services on my credit card. So I get an Amex alert. You just got a bill for $5,000 from O'Connor Professional Group and Diana Clark. And I was like, what the hell is this about? So I go on his iPad, I see everything. And then I text him, I'm like, yo, are you trying to take me against my will and like falsely commit me? Like, are you that much of an idiot? Like, what? And he writes me again. And I'm like, Brian, I'm well, consider the evidence. And he writes me again, another text. And it says, I'm not trying to take you away, Lizzie. I cannot do that under the law. And you're not a danger to yourself or kids. I'm writing this to you so you'll have it in writing for me. And that should give you comfort. You are a wonderful person. Now, don't you think you're paranoid? Don't you think you should go get help? Because you're saying some pretty crazy things. You think that I like would hire people to take you away? And I'm like, no, motherfucker, I'm not paranoid. I have the contracts. I've got the emails. I've got the text back and forth. And now I've got the $5,000 receipt on my credit card. So he instantly then blocks me on the phone. Like, he cuts off all communication. And then like within 24 hours, I get a refund on my credit card for this money. So I'm like, this guy is losing his goddamn mind. And he's going to lose his license. Like, it's illegal what he's doing, right? So I take it to the police at that point. Now, the police had already been called by my husband, which should have given me, again, a red flag that the police were in on it. But literally, when my husband called the police, and it's in that video, the day that I went to confront him at the hotel, when he agreed to stay away from children, acknowledged that he was a pedophile, agreed to stay away from children, and that I could help him get a, hold on, let me see if I can find this receipt for you. I might not have it right here, but it's on the, I posted it on the site where he admits to being a pedophile and stuff, right? So I take all of this to the police and I say, listen, I know we have a pedophilia investigation going into my husband, and I know that I asked for you guys to give me space to work this out so my children could decompress now that my husband's missing. But now things are getting serious. My husband's trying to have me kidnapped and I need your help. And I think I need an order of protection. And the detective, who was Detective Fred Galbraith of the Briarcliff Manor Police Department, he's a detective sergeant, so he's very high up, stonewalls, ignores me. He won't take evidence from me. He won't let me come in and give affidavits. They'll let me submit things in writing, but I later find out they just take it and file it downstairs. They don't do anything with it. So he denies, and I tell him I have video evidence I want to show him. He won't take the video evidence. I tell him that I have stuff on an iPad. They ask me to bring the iPad in, which I do, and they fucking drive the iPad back to my husband. And they even put it on the police blotter. Elizabeth Harding Weinstein returns Brian Stryker Weinstein's iPad and then says, we return Mr. Weinstein's possessions to him. while he's under an active pedophilia investigation, all the evidence of the website, and again, like looking back on it, somebody's like, why didn't you make a copy? And I'm like, because I didn't fucking think that the police were in on it. Like, I don't, like, I'm one of those people that, yeah, you just think like, I'm savvy, but I'm also not paranoid. So I think that these police, here's an open investigation. I don't need to tell the police. It's stupid. Yes. Now, of course, yeah, I want to fucking shoot myself in the head for not doing it, but there's nothing I could do. Right. And I have all the evidence of my husband opening bank accounts. Right. This is with our money at the time. I have all the evidence of my husband acknowledging that he was working with these people in malicious intent against me. I have the gaslighting where he says, I'm trying to act in your best interest, but I agree that following Jeff's recommendations, which I did not do, would not have been in your best interest. And I tried to deceive you because I thought you would draw the wrong conclusion that the fact that I was communicating with him meant that I agreed with his recommendation, which I didn't, and I didn't follow, so I never followed. So I have all this. I have the history of the gaslighting. I have the text I have the signed contracts. I have the receipts. I have the contracts. I have the communications with his lawyer where they're scanning the documents back and forth. And he's like, okay, I got in contact with her, but now Liz has your iPad, so stay off of text and I'll communicate with the kidnappers myself. Like, I have it all. I bring it to the cops. The cops ignore it, okay? So then I bring it to the DA's office. I bring it to the Westchester County DA's office, the Victim Justice Network, and the District Attorney's Office that specializes in domestic violence. His name is Fred Green. And Fred Green says to me, Mrs. Weinstein, your husband sounds like a nice guy. Like, maybe he's just trying to help you. Why don't you just go away for a couple days? I don't think there's anything unlawful here. And I was like, Mr. Green, my husband's missing and undergoing a pedophilia investigation. And you want me to abandon my children and just go away for a couple of days? What are you doing? I see you. And let me ask you something, Mr. Green. You're a lawyer, right? And he's like, oh, yes, I'm a district attorney. I was like, yeah, I thought so. So I'm sure you're really smart, sir. And I'm sure you went to law school, so you must be really intelligent. But my husband went to Yale. My husband's a partner at Yale Law School. And when my husband tells me it was fucking unlawful if he was doing it, then I trust my husband. And I know that when you tell me it's not unlawful, you're just protecting him. So I see you, Green. I see what you're doing. Knock it off. So then
I want people to really think about what you just said. Your husband went to Yale and is still on, what is it, a board, I think you said?
Oh, the ethics board.
The ethics
board of Duke University. And they have evidence of his pedophilia. They have evidence of his domestic violence. All of his Davis Polk partners, his on the board of Davis Polk, have evidence of his pedophilia, evidence of his domestic violence, evidence, and the domestic violence that he's committed since all of this happened has been severe and undeniable, right? And people say to me, I don't get it. Why doesn't Davis Polk fire him? Why doesn't Duke University kick him off the board? And my answer to that is, well, why doesn't the mafia fire their hitman when he kills somebody? The obvious answer.
Have this facade in their head that if you're a pedophile or if you're an abuser, you're going to look like this kind of strung out crackhead homeless person. Right. And it just goes to show almost every single survivor that I have had on the show or guest, every abuser, perpetrator, they've always been upstanding members of society that.
Yes, upstanding.
Yes. And so I want people to understand that this person had a whole city, a whole college, like all these people were fooled by this person and were enamored by him. You were looking at him. These aren't typical people that you imagine in your head. Well, how did she not know? Right. Nobody knew. And all these people around him, and your husband was very successful from what I heard that you said.
Yes.
Your family was very successful. So these are traits that we normal people have? Well, they went to Yale. They can't have anything wrong with them. They're successful. That means that there's not anything wrong with them.
Look at Epstein. Look at Epstein. Look at Weinstein. Look at Sandusky. The thing that we have to remember is that the reason that they're sociopaths is because they use their niceness to deceive. They know that you're counting on this indoctrinated belief of what an abuser is. So they instead present this like humble, nice, quiet guy who's just, gosh darn it, he's just a victim of his loud life. I mean,
and think about what it would do for Yale University to have this news come out. Think about what it does to them with the facade of what do you mean you have this person on your ethics board? So think about that people go to protect their image at the expense of somebody like you who's on the other side of it, completely censored, not able to get your voice out, and you're up against these monsters who are protecting somebody and who are so powerful.
Yep, but we also have to remember this. These people hide in plain view. So we are indoctrinated into a societal cult that protects pedophiles, okay? Yale knows about him. Yale Law School knows about him. Yale Law School actually has a separate program just for specific domestic violence victims, and they won't represent it. Okay, they protect him. Duke University, I sent everything to the Keenan board, to the full board. And you know what I found out? The chief of the board then sent a personal and private email to Brian to say, hey, just wanted to key you in on this. And then Brian submitted that to the court as evidence to use against me. As though, like, can you believe how stupid she is? And I'm like, you just outed the board member of the Keenan Institute for Ethics and one of our most highly esteemed universities in our entire country, and they are protecting him. It's batshit crazy. They don't even take his picture down from the website to say, you know what, Mr. Weinstein, we're not judge and jury here, but she gave us hard evidence in writing of your admission of this. And so until this gets worked out, we're going to put you on leave of this board. No, and it's only these institutions backing him that give him the power that he has. It's the fact that he's a Davis Polk partner that gets him the credibility with the judges, that gets him the credibility with the police, that they think, well, he's making $5 million a year, I'm going to get my money from him. So Davis Polk is complicit in all of this. They are aiding and abetting pedophilia. City Private Bank, who is our private bank, aiding and abetting. My private banker, who I've had for years, would call me and be like, what do you need the money for? He doesn't want you to have the money. And I was like, what the hell? You're my private banker. You don't get to say what I do with my money. My car, he gave me the car that I have that he broke and it's leaking on my feet as I drive. I need to get it fixed. Well, how about you bring it to the dealership and then he'll pay the dealership directly. I'm not going to ask him for that money. And I'm like, it's none of your goddamn business. But when I confronted the CEO of Citibank, who at the time was Peter Charrington, he put a stop to it right away. Well, within 6 weeks, Peter Charrington's no longer at Citibank. A new COO of Citibank, private bank, this guy by the name of Mark Davidson comes on board. And then Mark Davidson says, oh, by the way, we're getting rid of you as a client. And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm still on all the mortgages. So what do you mean? And he's like, well, we're going to close all your bank accounts. And I was like, well, that's just stealing my money. It's not getting rid of me as a client. So you have to issue the checks to me. We issued them to your husband. Well, you can't do that. Most of those accounts are in my name solo. Did it anyway. Like, it's fucked up. But the issue is, if our way of holding these people accountable is to bring them to justice via our courts, and our courts are actually corrupt. The judges are the ones protecting the pedophiles. The judges are the ones that are literally taking protected parents and punishing them for protecting your children. I'm not lying. Like, this is not my story. This has been going on for decades, and there have been books written about it. And I thought that maybe I was one of the first people to call it what it is, child trafficking by our government. But no, There are books 10 years ago that it's like our government is a corrupt organization trafficking children to pedophiles and abusers and profiting from it financially, and nothing's changed. And so I feel like what's happening now, as it's been told in these predictions of this great awakening of our time, is that people are starting to realize we have been living under a very, very big lie that the governments are here to protect us, and they're not. Our governments are here to control us, to manipulate us, and they have been working against us using these issues of mind control for a long time, and we're starting to wake up to it. And then once we wake up to it, where we go from there, that's kind of where I am now. Like, so I'm going through highlighting my case of judicial abuse, which is what it is. It's litigation abuse and judicial abuse, because, you know, Brian can kick me out of the house, but I have a legal right to be there. But if a judge kicks me out of a house, that gives the cops legal right to arrest me anytime I go near my house, even if the judge's order is wrong and lawful and I'm never given a trial on it, the cops still can arrest me. You understand? So the abuse that's happening to me now goes beyond what my husband could ever do on his own. The abuse that's happening to me now is being perpetrated by the judiciary. And at first it was just local judiciary. It was like my Briarcliff Village judge and like these Westchester judges that were in my town. But then it went to the state judiciary, and I'm now in federal courts, and federal judge Kathy Seibel is doing it. It's insane. Like, she's a federal judge. She's a federal judge in the Southern District of New York. And I'll talk a little bit about how that's happening. But so let me just circle back to exactly what happened. So my husband's missing. He's under a pedophilia investigation. He tries to have me taken against my will. Pedophilia investigation has been opened because my husband first called the police. And when my husband called the police, in my crazy mind, I was like, it's his guilty conscience. He wants it all to come to fruition, and he just wants this to be over. So the police came, and I was actually a little protective of them. I said, there's an issue with child abuse. There's an issue with pedophilia. We're trying to handle this privately. I'm trying to protect my children. And then the police are like, we're going to come and we're going to investigate and then it all started from there. He goes missing. The whole thing happens. We're trying to take me against my will. I find everything. I send everybody that's on there, including Diana Clark from O'Connor Professional Groups. This guy, Stephen Jones, who I don't even know who he is, but he's being copied. It turns out it was a lawyer that my husband hired, who he himself just tried to do the same thing to his wife, claim that she's crazy so that he could get the kids, who also has some weird pedophilia issues going around, where he's a skeevy Boy Scout leader in our town, and like all these other issues that are happening with him, right? That's a whole nother story. But so the Stephen Jones guys comes on to represent my husband, and this woman, Cynthia Last, who is a doctor down in Florida, that sends my husband the inpatient admission forms. I send everybody cease and desist. I say that I'm filing it with the police. And then the following night, after all this happens and I file everything, the police show up at my door with an order of protection in favor of my husband and the children who were with me against me. So the order says that basically, like, my husband, and this is what he used to get that order, just this one sheet of paper. Nothing, no evidence, nothing more than just this. It's 10 lines.
What is,
you want me to read it?
I want people to understand that there really isn't much substance to something like this, and you're not just making it up.
Correct. So he filed what's called a family offense petition. Now, what's interesting is before here's the text I was trying to find earlier, and my husband acknowledges his stuff. You guys don't have to read it all online here. It's just, you can get a look for it and then scroll through my pages, and when you see something like this, you know what it is. So my husband went to court while he's missing, while he's undergoing a pedophilia investigation, and there's no divorce action at all. And he says, and he files a custody petition that says, I don't want to divorce her, but I need help because there's volatility in my home. So I'm coming to you to ask for immediate custody of my children while my wife has them, okay? Now, what's interesting is because of COVID, there was something in New York State called Administrative Order 7820. And Administrative Order 7820 says that custody petitions of any kind, electronic or paper, cannot be accepted or filed by any court unless there's crazy exigent circumstances which show demonstrated physical harm to the children, and that's well documented and it's signed off on by 2 other judges. Then you can file a custody petition, but absent of that, no custody petition, okay? So not only does my husband not have that, but in his custody petition, he says, I've got no concerns of harm against the children. She would never harm the kids. She's a wonderful, safe mother, but there's volatility in the home, and I want immediate custody of my children. So he files that at 3 o'clock, okay? And when he files that, and I have that here, I'm sorry, this is filed at 3:31, I believe it is. He specifically states that the children reside with me at my address. And then he puts that his address is this address, which is 58 Willow Avenue in Larchmont, which is the address of his best friend, one of his best friends, Eric Grossman, who is the chief legal officer of Morgan Stanley, and where Brian was hiding out, okay? So he puts this address in this custody petition at 3:30, which should not be accepted by the court, but it was. And then immediately after at 4 o'clock, he puts this custody petition, which is handwritten. So it leads one to believe that they went in, they filed this, and the court said, we can't really hear you or see you because number one, we don't hear custody petitions ex parte. And number two, they're not allowed to be taken. But if you fill out an order of protection, then maybe we can hear you. Did that happen? I don't know. I wasn't there, but that's the only thing that would make sense to me as to why this one's handwritten. This is all well done, filed with 138 pages of bullshit to the court. And anyways, but the point of this is it shows conflicting information. And when you file what's called simultaneously submitted petitions to the court with conflicting information, that shows perjury. Right? It shows that you're lying. You can't say you live here, you live here. On this one, you can't file a custody petition that says she has no intent to ever harm anybody, and she never would. And then on this one, say with intent, right? It's the custody petition should be thrown out just on that. All petitions should be thrown out just on that. But this woman, family court judge, child trafficker, Arlene E. Katz, gives my husband an order against me in favor of him and the children. And now let me tell you, this is the only thing that he says. With intent, telephones, emails, and texts incessantly at various times, causing me to be anxious, worried, sleepless, distracted, and fearful. So he's showing that he's in mentally disturbed state, okay? Respondent has stalked me incessantly, accessing my private texts and communications with counsel, and sought to find me as recently as last night using my children's Apple device to force me to flee to my lawyer's office, where I was forced to flee as accosted by my lawyer and accosted my lawyer, blocking his car and his door and his office building until Eastchester Police responded to my attorney's 911 call, all causing me fear and anxiety and other harmful effects. Now, what's interesting about this is this in and of itself has nothing called Article 8 evidence. Article 8 evidence is what's required in order to get an order of protection against somebody. Article 8 says that you have to show bodily harm or immediate threat to bodily harm. None of this. Writing me too many emails is not a threat to bodily harm. Saying that your lawyer was scared when I showed up at the office to make sure you weren't killing yourself, that's not threat to, none of this is threat to bodily harm, right? So it should have been thrown out, just as totally ridiculousness. Now, what's interesting is this is all also written in his lawyer's handwriting. None of this is Brian's handwriting, but it is signed by Brian. This is the night that he's claiming. So now we know the text and the emails is all bullshit, because every text and email that I wrote to this man was like, where are you? We love you. We miss you. I know you're scared. I know this is hard, confronting your fucking lifelong issue of pedophilia, but stop, Brian. You're hurting us and you're scaring us. And you're sending these crazy people to come and kidnap me. What are you doing? Are you a threat to yourself or others? Do I have to get an order of protection against you? What is going on? Will you help protect us? I'm asking you, we have issues going on with our son who's taking this college exam, and the college board acted unlawfully in canceling his exam and is making him retake it. And we're supposed to be bringing a case against the college board. And my husband suddenly wouldn't talk about it. So he's now abandoning all care for us. Okay, he wouldn't answer me, wouldn't, anyways. But this just goes to show how bullshit this is. So this is an actual picture of me on May 31st. What happened was, we didn't know, we knew from my kids' iPhones, right, where my husband was, and we just left him alone, right? But out of nowhere, at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, my son says, Mommy, Daddy just showed up at this place called, I'm gonna forget the name of it, the Johnson's palliative care. And now I have a nursing degree. So it's 10 o'clock on a Sunday night. I don't think that my husband's almost dead and he went there to get proper care. I think he went there to buy end-of-life drugs. Here's a man in his late 40s who just got discovered, you know, all of his dark secrets of being a pedophile are coming to light. He's a Yale Law School graduate, upstanding member of the community. This is a normal time that adult men commit suicide when this stuff starts coming out, right? So I think he's going to kill himself. So I go down there trying to stop him from killing himself. And I send him messages, which again are online, saying, Brian, stop. No, please. Please don't do it. Here's a picture, Jansen, that's what it's called, Jansen Palliative Care. Here's a picture of where Jack just said that you showed up. I'm coming, please don't do anything stupid till I get there, please, please. I get there, and there's this guy, I don't know who this guy is, standing in his car. And when I roll down my window, and you can see, this guy's parked here, I'm parked here, I'm not even blocking him. I'm just pulled over, and I'm like, excuse me, sir, I'm looking for my husband, Brian Stryker Weinstein. Do you know him? And he's about to get in his car. He stands, and instead of getting in his car, stands for 2 minutes, like looking off to space. Turns out this guy is Stephen J. Jones. This is my husband's lawyer. He has an office that's in the same building as this palliative care practice. Okay, but I don't know that. It just pops up on my on my son's iPhone. It popped up on his iPhone, Jansen Palliative Care at that one building. I show up, it's a big glass building. It could have been anything. Like, I thought that this was maybe the doctor who had just given him medicine, and my husband's dead on the floor upstairs. But I'm worried that his car isn't there, because I'm thinking, shit, maybe he didn't take a car here because he was literally not planning on leaving. Do you know what I mean? So this guy calls the police, and I'm like, I'm good. I want you to call the police on me. Like, what are you doing? What's going on? And then the police get there, and this guy, it took me 7 weeks to get this, but this guy says, and now mind you, I'm saying, my name's Elizabeth Harding Weinstein. I'm trying to find my husband. He calls 911 and says, help, help. This woman is scaring me. She's trying to attack. I'm not attacking you, sir. I'm 4 feet away from you. I'm looking for my husband, Brian Stryker Weinstein. Do you know him? Help, please come. Then the police come, and he pulls him aside and says, hey, I'm actually that guy's lawyer, and he's upstairs working on his brief, but he left when he heard that she was coming. But don't tell her any of this, okay? So I think my husband's upstairs dead somewhere, and I'm trying to save him. And this guy gets the police, is using the police to harass me, then tells the police to lie to me, which the police do. It says in here, I want to read to you what the police says. It says, Mr. Stephen Jones, who is Brian Stryker Weinstein's attorney, advised me that Brian was in the building, but had just left the building prior to Elizabeth's arrival. We asked if we could come to his office and check for Brian, to which Stephen complied. While in the office, he contacted Brian from Stephen's cell phone. Brian stated that he's having marital issues and did not wish to get into details. He did say that his wife, that he is safe and he did not wish to harm himself or anybody else. Stephen wished that we did not tell Elizabeth that Brian was in his office or that he was Brian's attorney. They acknowledge it. Elizabeth was not satisfied when we advised her that Brian was not in the building. Now, let me tell you how this really plays out. So I'm showing up thinking that my husband's just gotten end-of-life drugs and that this guy could be the doctor or the whatever that just gave it to him, but he's acting fishy. The police show up, they pull this guy aside, okay? This guy won't talk to the police in front of me. I'm saying everything about the police in front of this guy. He pulls the cops aside. They're standing inside talking. I'm pacing outside like, what the fuck? If you gave my husband morphine, he's gonna be dead. Then new police show up and I'm saying to them, listen to me right now. If you are stalling, why? There are 4 of you. One of you go upstairs and check on my husband. And instead, they're just like circling. And I was like, what is wrong with you? Why aren't you helping my husband? Go upstairs and check my husband. So they're all perpetuating this lie against me. They're playing in this whole thing, these officers, and I'm screaming at them. So I thought it was so nice that they said Elizabeth was not satisfied, because what really happened is I'm like, you fucking idiots, if you don't go upstairs and save my husband to make sure that he just didn't get end-of-life drugs from this fucking guy, you're all gonna have hell to pay, okay? They finally agree to go upstairs. They come up, they come back down. They say, we checked in the penthouse, he wasn't there. I'm like, it's not the penthouse, he's supposed to be in 203. Go back up and check 203. They go check, they come back down. They're like, you're acting crazy. I'm like, how am I acting crazy? What's wrong with you guys? I'm telling you that this man might be committing suicide somewhere, and you're making me out like I'm a crazy. What the fuck is going on? You guys are weird. And Stephen is just sitting there like this, right?
Well, first of all, if anybody thought somebody that they loved and were married to for so long was doing that,
Right.
is it a natural reaction to feel some type of emotional anxiety towards the fact that that could be happening?
The whole point is the facts are egregiously on my side. And this mofo then goes to the court and uses that and says that I'm stalking. Now, what's also clear about that is in the police report, it says, once Elizabeth heard Brian's voice on the phone, we asked if he was okay. He advised that he was fine and he was not in the building. Elizabeth acknowledged that Brian was not in the building and left the area without incident. There's no evidence of stalking, okay? And there's police reports contrary to the evidence of this. And yet, this stupid petition, I was evicted from my home. My children have been kidnapped by this pedophile. I've not ever been allowed to get access to my home in 11 months. I haven't been able to see my children. I haven't been access to get my belongings. All the clothes that I have, I either had to like scrape money up to buy or were given to me by people. Now, I'm not being gauche here, but I'm a multimillionaire. I have 2 homes, okay? The court has confiscated my home and my belonging. And then when I say this is unlawful and I'm allowed to get access to my home to get my belongings, they say, well, Mr. Weinstein doesn't want you to. So sorry, it's not for the court to issue an order to tell him that he's required to give you your belongings. You're like, yeah, that's exactly what the court's used for. So that one piece of paper is giving me an ex parte. Ex parte means one side, only one side was heard from. Okay, and my children went to court to say none of that's true. And we don't want to, why are you giving my mom an order against us? We've been living with our mom. Our dad left after we talked about pedophilia with him, and he's been missing, and we want to stay with our mom. And the court wouldn't hear from my children. They were 17, a month away from 16, and 13. The court refused to hear from them. Instead, they issued this order. And then the police came to my house and evicted me. And then, sorry.
And you didn't get to go to court either, right? You still haven't.
Well, this is what's clear. There was a court date, but at that hearing, I wasn't allowed, I was falsely assigned a lawyer it's a huge story, but the way they do it, the judges assign you a legal representation who take positions for your husband. Okay. They also assigned a lawyer for my children. Well, my children are 17, 16, and 13. They don't need somebody to speak for them. They're able to speak for themselves. But that lawyer for the children is actually a handler that's a gatekeeper. She is paid for by the pedophile. So the lawyer for the children is paid for by the pedophile. The attorney for me is paid for by the court. And then Brian hires his own attorney, okay? Who is a discredited attorney who got into a fist fight a year earlier for trying to do the same thing to his wife in court and got kicked out of court and was like, I mean, he has like these issues in grievance committee because he literally got into a fist fight in his own marital hearing and did this exact same thing, trying to get the children taken away from his wife under these false and baseless pretenses, right? But anyways, so this one piece of paper, I went to court refused to hear from me, just said, sorry, you have to be evicted, you have to stay away from the children, and we'll give you an immediate hearing. That was on June 5th. The police came to evict me. My children said they wanted to stay with me. And this is why it's so important that people know the law, because the law states that children in New York over the age of 13, they get to say what they want to do. So if the children of their own free will get in my car, like I can't kidnap my children, carry them and lock them in my car. But if they of my own free will got in my car and left with me as they wanted to, the cops and the judges can do nothing, but we didn't know that. And these officers, Sergeant Bassett of the Briarcliff Manor Police and Officer Raphael of the Briarcliff Manor Police, lied to my face and to my children. Both they lied and said, sorry guys, if you stay with your mother, we have to arrest her for kidnapping. Sorry, it's not her fault, it's the court's fault. But don't worry, stay with your dad, who you've been hiding from for weeks, who you don't want to talk to, who you could call at any moment, but you've actually asked not to speak to him after he left the house once you talked about his pedophilia. Stay with him, and your mom will get this all worked out on Monday. That was 11 months ago. And I haven't been able to see my children directly since. So I've been denied access to the court. I've been local police. So I've never been given a trial on that false and baseless order, right? And then local police would come up and say, you're in violation of this. And I'd say, what? No, I'm not in violation. I'm not doing anything wrong. What are you talking about? And that video is also online. And I said, actually, I have a video where I'm sitting in this exact same spot, and you tell me online, on recording, that I'm not in violation. And they said, yeah, sorry, we're going to arrest you anyways. And they arrest me in front of my children. And they bring me to court, and they give me a new order of protection. And they don't allow me access to the court to be heard on that one. And that was done by, let me get the picture of this guy so you can see these child traffickers. That's this guy. Child trafficker Howard T. Code. Okay. So he gives me a new order of protection, says that I have to stay 1,500 feet away from my home. Now let's be clear. I used to go and I'd sit on my street close to my house because I just wanted to I knew like they were trafficked to a pedophile. Sorry. And I didn't want them to think I had stopped fighting for them because they couldn't talk to me. They weren't allowed to see me at all. The court would issue an order saying that the kids are required to speak to the mom. And then the attorney for the children, Gloria Marchetti-Brock, would gatekeep them, and she just wouldn't set up the phone call. And then the judge assigned these supervisors, and the supervisors are her family's company. I mean, I have to laugh about it because it's so horrific, but it's so corrupt. But so the judge's family's company gets paid to supervise me. And they are also paid by the pedophile. So the lawyer for the children is paid for the pedophile. The supervisors are paid for the pedophile. My lawyer is paid for a pedophile. And yet this is all supposed to be a system of justice, right? So this guy issues an order that says I have to stay 1,500 feet away. And now what's important about that is you have to understand I was never, ever even accused of harm. And it's on record. The one thing that's on record is by Department of Social Services, who would come to see the kids while my husband was missing and they were staying with me in the home to say that they were safe. And it says there's no evidence of harm to the children by the mother, okay? They were there over several times over 2 weeks, okay? So I'm saying, Judge Code, most stay away orders, especially when they relate to a family issue, at most you would say you have to stay 15 feet, like something where like you can't actually hit somebody with a bat or something. 1,500 feet is reserved for violent offenders. And it's reserved for like somebody that raped somebody has to stay 1,500 feet away, right? So it's just an egregious show how badly these local judges are all acting out to protect a pedophile. Now, this judge that he went to for the original order of protection isn't even a judge in our jurisdiction. She was outside the jurisdiction, okay? But then what happened, so she gave the original order and then got kicked back to judges in our jurisdiction. And then every single judge in our jurisdiction recuses themselves without a valid reason. Just say, I recuse myself. So stupid. And lo and behold, it gets kicked back to her. So that's what's called forum shopping. Forum shopping is when you bring your case in front of a judge that you believe will be sympathetic, but that judge has no jurisdiction over you. Sometimes it's within your jurisdiction, you go to a judge. You can't do that. It's illegal, right? Right there, the whole case should be thrown out and it's evidence of what's called fraud upon the court. Nope, they don't do it. I then I have 5 lawyers who I hire to represent me, who were supposed to get me a phone call with my children, file to get away from this judge, file a motion to consolidate this in divorce court. So he had me evicted from the house on June 5th and kidnapped the kids on June 5th. On June 6th, I filed for divorce, citing cruel and unusual punishment, cruel and inhumane punishment, right? So I hire 5 lawyers, 8 weeks, $140,000. All of them refuse to serve my husband a copy of the divorce and refuse to file a motion to consolidate. So they're actively taking positions. My lawyers that I'm hiring actively are taking positions to help my husband. And then when you come out and you say, what are you doing? You're a divorce attorney that won't even serve him the divorce. And let's be clear, in order to serve him, all they had to do was email his attorney. And you're refusing to do it. So I see you acting, stirring the pot to help him. So I would fire them. And then the judges would say, oh, you must be difficult. You must be crazy because you're trying to represent yourself. And they ignore all the false evidence that my husband submits. They ignore everything that I put in about pedophilia. They ignore the kidnapping. They ignore everything. They just ignore all the domestic violence. This is now, we're getting into August now, okay? So come in August, I then have to fire all my attorneys. I'm still homeless. I'm living out of my car. I get arrested by the cops. And that's when I'm just like, okay, this is scary. Like these people are literally falsely imprisoning me, right? A kidnapping by police with no lawful reason to the arrest and bringing me down to the police station is kidnapping. So I then go down, we have a separate house down in Amagansett and it's under construction. So it was completely empty. There's like, we had the heat on, we had like the Wi-Fi hooked up so that the contractors could work there. He turned off that stuff and like I'm sleeping on a sleeping bag on the floor. All my bank accounts get shut off, all my credit cards, he refuses. Like I had frozen the accounts when he was missing and I saw him siphoning funds out of our accounts. I froze the accounts and I did something which is, it asks for mutual approval. So what it says is, listen, from now on, any transactions have to be approved by both sides. Like I can't just take out money, he can't take out money. Because in my sick, stupid mind at the time, I'm thinking he's just running scared. He's doing stupid things, but he's not really going to hurt me. Well, he would ask for money. He would say, I need money to pay for the mortgage, and I would approve it. I would say, I need to take out money to have food and gas, and he would deny me money. Okay. So I then file a motion to consolidate and divorce. This is in August. And I ask for emergency access to the court to be heard because I'm being denied all financial support. I have no way to pay for my living at all, right? So they delay it. This judge, Nancy Quincova, she looks like Family Guy. But this judge denies me access to the court, delays everything, and then finally, in October, mandates that Brian start paying me financial support and pays for my housing, okay? Brian denies all access, denies me any payment for housing, and gives me like a basic support. Now, this is gonna sound really gauche. We make $5 million a year, okay? We have millions of dollars in assets. My monthly stipend for that type of lifestyle is $75,000, okay? That's in support, and then you get housing. This is the part that feels gross to me. I grew up without money, so it feels gross to talk about this money, but then what you have to understand is theft is theft. If you're saying, well, because he's rich, he can steal from you, he doesn't have to give you as much as you're entitled to. Okay, you can have that indoctrinated belief if you want. But what I'm telling you is I'm entitled to 75. I present evidence to the court that that's what I'm entitled to. Brian says, I'll give her 20. And the court says, take it or leave it, but we recognize it's only temporary and it's well below what you're used to, but take it or leave it because we're not going to do anything else. Okay. So I say, well, I have absolutely no money and no way to take care of myself. So I have to accept the check. He gives me a check in October for that, but he denies me housing. I find a house, I sign the lease, I get the whole thing. So now I'm like fiscally, responsible for this lease. He denies it to me. So he denies me my own access to money. The court also denies me my own access to my own money for legal fees. So he is an attorney, a partner at a law firm. He's got attorneys to cover him, multiple attorneys. And I am a wife who's left homeless, left without access to my children, left without access to funding, left without access to my belongings, and I can't hire an attorney. It's bullshit. And the sick part is when you talk to other mothers and other fathers that have this happen to them, this is common. This is what the courts do. They squeeze you out of your finances, and then they make you take an attorney that they can then manipulate, that's hired by the courts, that's assigned by the courts. So I get his attorney disqualified. His attorney is so egregious that I get his unethical attorney disqualified, which is really hard to do, okay? And then he hires this one, Dina Kaplan, okay? The court delays consolidation of my case for months, which again is unlawful because it's something called judicial economy. Judicial economy is meaning like you have to keep everything tight. And if there's duplicative processes in the court, you consolidate them to make them simultaneous, okay? So I file a motion to consolidate in August that doesn't get heard until December 1st, doesn't get a ruling until December 1st. That's far beyond the outliers of what the court is supposed to decide on for 60 days. They finally consolidate. They disqualify his attorney. They allow a new attorney to be assigned. This attorney I had consulted with. This attorney was actually, I have emails back and forth. So she should be a conflicted attorney and not allowed to represent him. But not only does the court allow it, she lies on record and says, I've never, ever emailed with her. And I said, well, here are the emails. Here are the dates and the times and all the emails. The court allows for her to still stay represented. I mean, it's so egregious how corrupt it is. On December 1st, they consolidate the case. They assign me a guardian to say that I have to have a guardian on me to help me defend my rights. I'm like, no, I don't. And it's not defending my rights. You're just trying to silence a pro se litigant. But they're trying to get this idea of you're incompetent. And I want to take all of your assets and put them in control of a guardian who then can dissipate your assets and funnel them back to your husband. It's so stupid. So this woman, Christina T. Hall, comes on my case, but she doesn't file an order of appearance. She doesn't actually file motions into it. And she actually, after me pestering her, asked to be relieved by the court. Okay? Now, she isn't required by law to stay on if she knows that her appointment is unlawful. But yet she keeps staying on my case and says, oh, the court won't release me, so I have to stay on. No, you don't, lady. Get away from me. So now it's December. I have this new order of protection that gets issued by the judge, which is also unlawful, because in order of protection, when a case is consolidated, there's a law, Domestic Relations Law 252, which says when you're consolidating from family court into divorce, you cannot issue new ex parte orders of protection. That by law, both parties have to have the right to be heard, okay? She ignores it. She just does it anyways. And she gives me a new order of protection. So I then take this case to the appellate courts. And the appellate courts hold a fake hearing. They don't let me go in front of a judge. The clerk says, here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna hear from me. You're gonna tell me your side. The other side is gonna tell me their side. And then I'm gonna go argue both sides in front of the judge for both of you, to help you out. That's stupid. Nobody believes you. So, I try and get this dismissed. They instead say that my hearing for appellate court review is dismissed, but I want you to see this. Do you see how this looks like it's just a fake rubber stamp? See how there's a white line that goes through? It's clearly, there's like, it's complete fraud, but they're upholding this stupid order of protection. Okay, so that happens in December. I file this motion. Then in January, I go to my local village judge and I say to my local village judge, like, enough already. You have these orders of protection against me. I've never been given access to the court to be heard. The orders of protection are for violation of an order, which I was never proven guilty of and never given a trial on. This is ridiculous. So I demand a trial. Okay, so that's what I'm filing. And I'm filing FOIA requests to show that the police have been harassing me, right? Well, the police instead and the village arrest me for not wearing a mask. They deny me a hearing, they deny me due process, and they put me in solitary confinement. They just put me in jail. Solitary confinement. Nobody knows where I am. I'm not allowed access to a lawyer, and I'm locked in a 6x8 cell, strip searched, the whole thing, so inhumane, brought down to a cell, and I'm locked on my own wing. So there aren't even other prisoners there. It's a 3,000 person prison, and they lock me on my own wing, okay? And then the next day, the judge holds an arraignment, and it's still pedophile supporter and child trafficker Howard T. Code, who is just a nice guy in our town. This guy is a firefighter in our town, 4 days a week. And then 1 day a week, he comes in and handles all the traffic tickets in our town. That's who he is, okay? This guy sends me to prison without an arraignment, doesn't even see me. It's crazy. And then the next day, I have a Skype hearing in prison, and he tells me that I'm gonna be there for 7 weeks. And he tells me that he's remanding me in prison for what he calls a 730 exam, which is a competency exam to say whether or not I'm competent enough to stand trial. Now, let's be clear. I'm involved in 5 different lawsuits in 4 different cases at this time, in family court, in divorce court, in suing the judge for a writ of mandamus to demand a trial, in criminal case, and now, 7 weeks in, you're gonna question if I'm competent? I'm getting appropriate motions filed and processed through the courts. So my competency is self-evident. Do you know what I'm saying? It's such bullshit. But here I am kept in jail. And the sheer fact that he remanded me in jail for a competency exam, which could have been done as an outpatient anywhere, right? And also they're releasing prisoners from jail because of COVID, but yet he's gonna put me in jail. It's just, the corruption is obscene and it's egregious, and it's the way that the judges are actually using our mental health hygiene laws to kidnap people. And they've been doing it for decades. But now that we're at this point of COVID, it's coming out at a fever pitch. So he puts me in jail. I'm supposed to be there for 7 weeks. I end up getting myself out of there in 5 days. But I also get out there. But the way I get out of there was totally corrupt. What ended up happening was one of the court officers, the guardsman, is like, oh, I've got a lawyer. I'm going to let you come out of your cell and call this person. And I was like, fine. Okay. So they let me out of my cell. I call this guy, and he's in it, and his name is Rich Ferrente. And he's like, this is obscene, and I'm going to help you. And we've got to take this to the appellate courts, and we're going to blow the lid off of this. I was like, great. Instead, 3 days later, he holds a bail hearing. Well, I'm being held on misdemeanor charges. Misdemeanor charges don't require bail. So you can't hold a bail hearing. It should have been, well, the misdemeanor charges require bail, so of course she's released. That's what they should have done. But instead they hold a bail hearing, and there's this judge, Ann E. Minahan, who presides over it. And Ann E. Minahan says to me, Mrs. Weinstein, you have a long history of criminal activity. And I don't know if we should let you out of prison, but I'm going to give you an order of protection against your village. So you can't come to your village anymore. I'm giving you an order of protection against village manager Philip Zigarelli's place of business. So you can't come there anymore. And I'm going to mandate that you participate in a psychological exam, because if you don't, I'm going to haul you back to prison. And I'm like, based on what? You can't bring me to prison when I don't have criminal things. You guys are stupid. You don't even make sense. You sound like idiots, right? So I go to leave the prison. They instead, after the arraignment, where I'm supposed to be immediately released, they instead locked me back in my cell for 6 hours, where a psychological evaluator comes to my cell and tries to evaluate me. And I tell him my name, I tell him where I am, I tell him, the person, place, and time. I tell him the charges that I've been charged with, and that I'm a victim of severe narcissistic abuse, domestic violence by my husband, and now these judiciaries who are covering for him, and that I'm not willing to participate in any exam further than that, because that's all he needs to prove my competency, right? So he storms away. And then next thing I know, they release me from prison, but they're acting really weird. It's 9 o'clock at night, and they're acting like kind of bizarre, like, oh, ha, 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 come with us. We've got something in store for you. And I knew right away. So I go up to go get changed out of my prison clothes, and they're like, go get changed behind that curtain. I pull back the curtain, and there's 3 guardsmen, women guardsmen, sitting there with chains, rounds and rounds of chains. And she's sitting on the desk, swinging her legs and smiling, like has this like smile on her face like this. And I was like, you're not going to let me out of here, are you? And they're like, you're not going anywhere. They're like, you're going to a psychiatric hospital. So this was January 8th. They discharge me. They take me, they shackle my ankles. They have that long chain that goes to my waist, wrap the chain around my waist, shackle my waist, shackle my hands, and they bring me to Westchester County emergency room, to their psychiatric ER. So I get there. Now, again, I'm a Columbia University trained nurse, and I did my training for psychiatric care and emergency medicine in Bellevue in New York City, which is like a massive psychiatric hospital. So I'm like, bring it. I know my rights. So I get there and I tell them, I say, I'm a victim of severe narcissistic abuse. They are doing this to cover for their unlawful imprisonment. I want to speak to the director of the ED. I want to speak to the patient care representative, and I want 2 doctors here right now, right? So they try and lure me away. Mrs. Weinstein, don't worry, we're just going to help you. Just come with us. Just come with us and we're going to help you. And I'm like, hell no. I'm not going anywhere. I pick up the phone. I'm like, I know my rights. I pick up the phone. I call 4 people. I tell them I'm of sound mind and body, I'm fully competent. I'm in the ER. This is what they're trying to do. Please come to the ER to be a witness. So they just let me out of there and off I go. So I was falsely imprisoned from January 4th, which was a Tuesday. No, I'm sorry, January 4th, which I believe was a Monday, through the Friday, January 8th. I get out of prison. I then get my bearings, right? That was a really crazy time. I'm trying to see my children. They won't let me see my children. I then file a motion with the judges to have immediate hearings. They won't give me hearings. I then file a federal lawsuit to show the false imprisonment, the civil rights violations, and a complete violation of my due process. I filed that on March 8th. On March 9th, I get kidnapped. Literally kidnapped. I'm not joking. I get kidnapped by the same police who were defendants in my case that I filed the case against. And a video of the kidnapping is all online. I am walking, the village tricks me. They say, why don't you come to the village and pick up these forms? And I'm thinking, see, now that I filed this federal lawsuit, they're gonna like act lawfully. Like, good for me, Lizzie. Like, yay, you. Like, you're gonna get your kids back and good for you. Nope. I walk in the building. I'm walking up the stairs. The police jump me from behind. They drag me into the police station. They chain me to a wall. They don't give me access to a lawyer. They won't let any witnesses come. I now have a host of people in my town who know whenever I go to the village, if they call me and they can't get me, chances are that I've been falsely arrested. So one of my friends comes to the police station. They won't let her in, but she's able to record me through a crack in the door, showing me chained to the wall, hearing what's going on. I get brought again in front of this guy who's a defendant in my federal case. And they literally drag me. I say, you can't bring me in there. I'm entitled to a lawyer. They drag me in front of him. And he says, Mrs. Weinstein, and it was him. It was District Attorney David Lauscher and the court clerk, Rory Zerman, who was the one to call the cops to arrest me for not wearing the mask in the first place. They're all defendants in my case. And it was a Tuesday, and we don't have court on Tuesdays. Court is on Wednesday. So it was a complete and total setup. They're all ready and they're waiting for me. I walk in, this child trafficker says, Mrs. Weinstein, I'm deeming you incompetent. And I was like, frankly, Judge Code, I don't care what you deem me. My competency is self-evident. I'm a sound mind and body. I'm fully competent. I'm of no threat to myself or others. And you're just doing this in retaliation for filing the federal lawsuit against you. And he's like, too bad, don't want to hear it. And now you're going back to jail. Judge Code, why are you sending me back to jail? People get cleaned incompetent to avoid jail. You make no sense. This is totally unlawful. You're just shaking me down. You're trying to harass me. They bring me back to jail. I sit in jail for a few hours. I'm able to call a friend, Collect, because they had me in a holding cell, which has a phone where you can call out Collect. She says, don't worry, we have the attorney. He's coming to the jail to get you out. All those calls are recorded. Within a minute and a half of her saying that, the police come, the court off of the officers, the jail officers come busting into my holding cell, says, get up, we're transferring you. And they transfer me to St. Vincent's Hospital. I get admitted against my will to St. Vincent's Hospital in Harrison, New York, by a Dr. Afobi, Dr. Weinstein, and a Taib Mohammed, who's a nurse practitioner, who are there. Now, what's interesting about that is this hospital, this quote unquote hospital, is one of the ones that my husband mentioned I should be transferred to back in May.
Was Dr. Weinstein any relation to Brian?
No, I know, not that I know of, but I don't know all of his cousins or, but what's interesting about it is back in May when he was trying to have me falsely taken against my will, and you guys should know which hospitals these are. Silver Hill in Connecticut, that's a very famous psychiatric facility, and it's a known one that you can procure false medical documents. Silver Hill in Connecticut, Cornell Presbyterian in White Plains, not Four Winds in Harrison. So what's interesting is Four Winds in Harrison, which is where I got taken, also now known as St. Vincent's in Harrison, is known to be so fucking dirty and bad that even Brian in May was like, nah, don't take her to that place. But now in January, in March, he's like, okay, take her there. And then he also says Columbia Presbyterian on 168th Street in New York City. So these are places that are known by pedophiles where they can take your protected parents to procure false and baseless medical documents for a fee and get you falsely admitted against your will. So I show up at this place, and again, I'm totally calm. I know my rights, and I say, I'm of no threat to myself or others. I'm of sound mind and body. This is all in retaliation for filing the federal lawsuit against the judges and against the police, who were the ones kidnapping me now. And so I demand to speak to my lawyer, and I demand to, I want to speak to the patient care advocate and to the medical director and two other doctors, because they need like a certain number of doctors to all agree to admit you, right? Dr. Phoebe looks at me and says, we're not doing any of that. Let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to come in here, you're going to do what I say. And if you don't, we're going to send you back to jail. You're going to stay there for 5 days. And then we're going to send you to a state-run mental hospital. How about that? And I was like, Dr. Phoebe, you make no sense. Why would you be sending me to jail when I have no criminal charges against me, sir? And actually, even then, what was funny is in the hearing where child trafficker Code said that he was deeming me incompetent, he says, I'm discharging any and all of the criminal charges against you, which I've never been held, even given a chance to be heard on, which I've demanded a chance to be heard on and you're refusing. So all the malicious prosecution charges that they had brought against me to, with willful intent to harm me, he dismissed all of those. So I have no criminal charges against me. Why are you sending me to jail? And they're like, stop talking and go in that room. So then they admitted me to the psych hospital, and that was on the 9th, on March 9th. And I was allowed to call somebody, and they recorded a phone call where I said, I'm of sound mind and body, I'm fully competent. Here's the hospital that I'm at, and here are the patient phone, the numbers for the patient phones where people can call. Instantly, I started getting, because people now had been following my story for about 6 months. So I started getting phone calls from people in Australia, in Sweden, in Europe, in Canada, and California, like everybody who's like, Lizzie, we see what's happening. We know what's going on. They started calling the CEO of the hospital. They started calling the Briarcliff police, right? Because we have a video of me in handcuffs saying, I'm of sound mind and body. I'm fully competent. They won't let me speak to a lawyer. I'm not a threat to themselves or others, but they're bringing me in jail. I have no criminal charges. And then my friend's like, are you bringing her to jail? And they're like, yep. It's just so egregious. But the point is, our government is not looking for clear and convincing evidence of a crime with which to take you against your will anymore. They are looking and using thinly veiled plausible deniability to kidnap people. And this isn't just my story. This is happening in hospitals all over the world, where people go in for even like an elective thing that we're now allowed to get, service for, and then they go in for that service, for that medical treatment, and then the hospital refuses to allow them to leave. They're going to keep them on mental hygiene hold because they're billing them for it, okay? It's happening with our police, that they're using these thinly veiled laws to kidnap people, and it's happening with our judiciary. Mine just seems to be happening boom, 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 because I don't let up. Like they get out and they're like, yeah, there, now we scared her. Now she's going to stay away from us and she'll stop fighting for her children and just leave them with a pedophile. And I'm like, no freaking way. So then I escalated to the next court, and then they escalated to this. So I was held for 2 weeks. Now in New York State, the mental hygiene laws are such that when you're being held against your will, you can file a letter to the hospital to demand an immediate hearing. And the hospital has 5 days to hold a hearing. Well, in order to do that, because the hospital was refusing to allow me to speak to a lawyer, they would only let me speak with the New York State Mental Health Hygiene Legal Service, which is supposed to advocate for patients who are indigent and can't afford it, okay? I can afford it. My husband's just keeping all my money. So I call this woman, her name is Melissa Tuthill. So I call her on March 10th, okay? And I say to her, lady, like, file the letter right now. Well, she doesn't file it until March 15th. So then that delays the 5 days until March 19th. So I'm held there for 2 weeks without a hearing. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And this woman is employed by the courts. When I get out, I realize her address is Melissa Tuthill at newyorkcourts.gov or .org, whatever. But they're employed by the very same people that are falsely imprisoning me. You understand? So it's all just a web of deception and a delusion of justice that we think that there are laws to protect us so this stuff can't happen. But when you really test those laws, the laws are held on by not even a Q-tip. It's held on by like a Cheeto, right? Like just like an orange Cheeto is holding that law and breaking it, because all of those laws are held to the integrity of the judges, right? The judges are responsible for recusing themselves. The judges are responsible for acknowledging the fraud. The judges are responsible for allowing you access to the court to be heard on emergency issues. And if the judges decide not to do it, and the judge has immunity, then you've got no recourse. So that's what happened to me. I filed this motion for emergency injunctive relief and access to be heard in my federal case now, because remember, I have a federal case. So when I filed the federal case on March 8th, I said to that judge at the time, who it wasn't even Kathy Seibel, it was a different judge, which that there shows impropriety, because they shouldn't have just discharged a judge. A judge has to have just cause to recuse himself. So at the time, the judge assigned was Keith Karras, K-A-R-A-S, okay? So I had to, because the hospital was refusing to allow me to communicate with people on the outside, including filing letters with the judges or filing any information into my court. So what I had to do was I had to sneak out. I had to handwrite a motion, and then I had to sneak it out through somebody underneath their shirt, bringing it, who then brought it to the court to file. It was ridiculous, but I did. And it's another motion. I filed one motion I filed the motion, the initial action on March 8th. And then I filed a separate motion, which was for emergency injunctive relief, to say that I had due cause to believe that Judge Code was going to retaliate against me. And so I wanted an emergency stay on his orders. They deny me that. Then Judge Code puts me in here. So then while I'm in there, I sneak out a letter saying, hey guys, guess what? I was right and I'm in here. So how about access to the court? And that judge recuses himself, gets dismissed, and instead this judge gets assigned on the 14th, okay? So now on the 18th, my hearing is held for the 19th. On the 18th, I get rulings from her dismissing all of my motions, dismissing all of the judges listed and the district attorneys in my case as defendants, but not the other defendants, okay? Dismissing them. Now, mind you, my case hasn't even been heard, had been served yet, because I had just filed it. And before I had a case to serve, a chance to serve it, which means to bring the papers to the other parties, I get arrested by them and then falsely imprisoned by them. So she, before any of the other parties even go on record to state their case. She says, don't worry, defendants. I'm just going to dismiss this case against you. Okay? Kathy Seibel. Then I get served by the hospital that what's supposed to be a request, an emergency request to be discharged. Okay, that's what the hearing was supposed to be. They say instead, they're now going to have a hearing for medication over objection. Well, you can't serve me a medication over objection hearing less than 24 hours before the hearing. You can't do that. It's unlawful. That's not proper notice. You would have had to give me proper notice that I would have had a chance to respond to it in papers, and they didn't do any of that. So I go in front of this judge, who happens to be, lo and behold, boom, 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 the same judge that held the medication, I mean, the hearing for misdemeanors, for bail with misdemeanors when misdemeanors don't require bail. So the same judge, Annie Minahan, who isn't even a mental health hygiene judge, because there's a small group of judges that handle this, she now is going to hear my case. Same judge. It's just totally correct. And instead, what she does, I don't have a lawyer who's representing me, because the mental health hygiene legal services has acted corruptly. They won't file any of my documents. She's filed all of my affidavits late. It's like a complete shit show. So they then instead say, we're going to let you do the whole thing yourself. So I have to learn how to submit evidence. I have to learn how to, but I do it all while I'm locked in this mental facility. I learned all that stuff. I then go to the hearing. I run the entire hearing. I put the judge on the stand who's trying to hold me against my will, and acknowledge that in 2 weeks, this judge, Alejandra Catan, has never even seen me. And she acknowledges that on the stand. She's like, no, of course I haven't seen you. You refuse to let anybody see you. And I was like, okay, that's it. Thank you. Get down. Right? So she submitted 15 pages plus of documents from the hospital of all these like assessments that she's done with me, but she's never seen me. It's crazy. And she acknowledges that on the stand. And yet Judge Minahan then assigns me a litany. She requires that I be held against my own will. She says that I'm just so incompetent that I don't even know what's good for me. And therefore, it's incumbent upon them for my own health to hold me against my will and force medication on me. So I'm a 49-year-old woman, no medications my entire life. She forces me lithium. She forces me Depakote. She forces me Zyprexa. She forces me Haldol injections. And now, if for my weight, I'm 110 pounds, 115, for my weight, you might give 100 milligrams. They order 1,500 milligrams. Like, it's what they do. It's just sick and twisted. And it's a modern day lobotomy. And I said to this woman, I was like, this is a death sentence that you're giving me. What are you doing? And she's like, well, and I said, I was like, I am a kind and caring mother who is trying to protect my children. And I have never, ever harmed anybody. And what you're doing right now is cruel and unusual punishment. And she says, Mrs. Weinstein, I want you to know I believe you. And I agree. I think you are kind and caring. But we're doing this for your own good. We're doing this for your own good, which, by the way, is the mantra of the Third Reich. For your own good is what they would say to people whenever they were, it was their motto, right? Look it up. For your own good is what our government uses as a means to coerce and manipulate people. It's what they're doing now with the masks. It's what they're doing with all of these mandates. It's what they're doing with the vaccine. It's for your own good, as though they know better than what we do. It's sick and twisted. So anyways, I was locked in there. I was there for 24 days, and I had to take this medication every single day, which was enough. It was like a frontal lobotomy. They were trying to just like completely disassociate me. And while I was there, I ran yoga groups. for the other patients. We had like powwow sit down like support groups just with ourselves. And then the hospital would like not let us sit in a room together anymore because they were like, we don't like that you guys are all talking and helping each other. Like it was sick and twisted. And I had to take this sick dosage of these poisons every single night. And I would just say to myself beforehand, I would say, listen, body, I don't know how you do it, but I know that people can take a placebo and they can cure themselves of cancer because they commit in their mind that these medicines help them. Well, in the same way, I want you to know that these medicines are poison. What they're trying to get, they're poisoning me. They're literally poisoning me. And so I want you, body, just to poop these straight out. I want you just to like not let it cross a blood-brain barrier, not let it affect you, and just get rid of these medicines. And I would meditate, and I would just take them, and I would go to sleep, and I would try and poop them out in the morning and drink a ton of fluids and try and focus on I try and work on my balance, like things that I know would be neurologically affected once these medicines kicked in. So I would try and do like these balance practices. I would try and do, like I said, deep breathing and meditation. I would try and do yoga. I would try and do reading, things that would help me to focus until I was finally let out of there. So that happened on, I was let out on March 2nd. And then on March 6th, the sick and twisted woman then wrote an order that said, hey, Mrs. Weinstein, when you asked to be released from the false imprisonment, you brought up to the court that you're incompetent because you were in a psych hospital, so you must have been incompetent. So you brought up your issue of incompetency before this court. So now I'm going to demand that you submit to me who you want to be your guardian ad litem. And hey, defendants, this guy, Louis Silverman, I just got in touch with him, and he's going to represent the defendants. So he's going to submit to me all the evidence of your incompetency, okay? Okay, because I'm just going to do my job. I'm just going to do my job. Sick and twisted. So she issues this fucking order that now the defendants in my federal case, who have never been served, whose no lawyers have filed an order of appearance, she has ex parte communications with them, gets the name of an attorney. She then has them submit to the court against my HIPAA regulations and in violation of all HIPAA rights. Evidence of my incompetency, and then the other side doesn't even serve me anything. It just gets locked in a vault. And so I then take all of the money that I had saved from my husband, that I'd been getting these small amounts of payments from him. I took all that money and I finally was able to rent a house. So this is the first time that I've been in a house in 11 months. I got here on April 21st. I had filed a motion previously to hold my husband in contempt for not paying housing. And the court wrote back while I was imprisoned in March, and the court wrote back and said, Mrs. Weinstein, you're right. He is required to pay you housing. But you know what? You've never given us receipts for the housing that you paid with the money that you don't have. So we can't hold him in contempt because you've never paid for the housing because you didn't have money. So then I had to take the money that I did have and get a house using all the money and now file another motion to the court to say that he's in contempt because here's the money, here's the receipt, here's everything, and he's never paid. And at the same time, try and fight this psychopath from saying that I brought my competency to her because I asked to be released from the false imprisonment. And then this psychopath, child trafficker, Stuart Halper, who is another judge in Briarcliff Manor, who's now falsely arresting me again because they're saying, so my orders of protection all expired in March. One expired on March 4th, one expired on March 31st. Now, the one that expired on March 4th, my husband's lawyer even specifically wrote to the court and said, please extend it. Just extend it. I know she's never been found guilty. I know that she's actually never been given a trial. I know that she's on record of being safe. And there's never been any accusations about her even to procure this one. So that first form, the form that I showed you, that one page, that was a family offense petition that my husband filed with the court in June. But that one expired in December. Then that one expired in November. I'm sorry, December 1st, I think. In December 4th, when the new judge, Nancy Quincova, the one that looks like Family Guy, when she issued a new order of protection, she didn't even have a petition for my husband to do it. She just issued an order of protection with no petition. She just issued an order of protection with no petition on January 4th, okay? Then when it expired on March 4th, this child trafficker wrote to her and said, can you please extend it? Please, please, please. And they didn't. There's no extension whatsoever, okay? Nothing. Then I'm filing all these notices with the Judge Seibel, and out of nowhere, on April 16th, I'm driving through a different town, a neighboring town, and I get an email with a new order of protection. And this new order of protection that I get emailed, I'm trying to find a copy of it right here. This new order of protection that I get emailed says that it's going to be backdated through December 4th. Now, that's something called ex facto bill of retainer. Ex facto bill of retainer is when a judge issues an order that says that it wasn't illegal when you were doing it, but now I'm issuing an order backdating it, so you're required to be held accountable for your actions when you did something that wasn't illegal at the time, right? So I drove by my son's car. There's no order of protection. There's no reason I can't be by his son's car. That was on April 9th, okay? You issue me an order of protection on April 16th and say that it's backdated to December 4th, which is totally unlawful. And then after getting that email, I'm just driving down the road and I get pulled over. And this is all on there too. April 16th, they just pull me over. And they said, get out of the car, you're under arrest. And I said, for what? They won't tell me. I eventually get out of the car. Now, what's messed up about this is that they're arresting me for activity that they say that I violated the order of protection on April 5th and April 6th, and then a couple other dates. Well, it was April 16th. If that's true, you should have had a warrant. You can't just pull me over for nothing. You had to have a warrant. And you had to produce a warrant for me. They had no warrant. They never produced one. They've never given me a warrant. They just unlawfully arrested me. And then once I got in, said, okay, we're holding you for these charges. And I was like, well, that's ridiculous. As a matter of law, you can't hold me for those because that's an ex facto bill of retainer to say that I just got this. And isn't it convenient that you issue me an order of protection now and 90 minutes later, I get pulled over? Doesn't that show collusion? How do you even know that he opened the email? How do you even know? You know what I'm saying? And this guy, Stuart Halpert, child trafficker, pedophile protector, gives me a new order of protection and says I have to stay away 1,500 feet from my kids. 1,500 feet again. So that's my story.
What's the status on your children right now? Have you spoken to them? What is going on with them?
Okay, so my children now are 18, almost 17. She'll be 17 in July and 14. Okay. I've not spoken with them directly since June 5th. Anytime since June 5th, I was only allowed to speak with my children under their handlers. Okay. It's called Comprehensive Family Services. And they're supposed to be supervisors, remind you. Now, the supervisors are paid for by the pedophile, by Brian Straker Weinstein, okay? And They're the judge's family's company. The judge's family company, which she acknowledges on record that is her family's company. But she says, well, because I've acknowledged the conflict doesn't exist. And I was like, that's not how conflict works. Acknowledging the conflict doesn't rid you of the conflict. So what happened was, in the beginning, I got evicted June 5th. I was given a court order to mandate that the children be able to talk to me on June 17th. Gloria Marchetti Brock, who is the lawyer for the children that's paid for by my husband, my pedophile husband, doesn't schedule a phone call, blocks me from scheduling a phone call. So I don't speak to my children for a solid month until July 5th is the first contact. That contact is overseen by Bettina Thompson, who is the judge's family's company. And again, if I say to the children, oh my God, are you okay? Are you safe? She said, you're not allowed to say that. Don't talk to them about that. And if you do, I'm going to end this call. So she threatens us, she harasses us, she berates us. It's awful, okay? From June 5th to July 29th, I wasn't able to see my kids at all. They didn't give me any access to see them. July 29th was my daughter's sweet 16th birthday. Sorry. And I had a lawyer at that time. And my lawyer, Michael Stutman, tried to cancel the visit on me. I'm not joking. It's a psychopath. And I stuck to my guns and I just pushed. And the visit eventually happened. And this child trafficker and pedophile supporter, Richard Teresi, he was the supervisor. When my children first saw me, they came running to me and they were hugging me and crying. Sorry.
You have nothing to be sorry for.
And this guy would come running over and be like, stop whispering. You're whispering, you're conspiring. This is against court rules. You're breaking the rules of the court. And I'm going to end this visit right now. So my children are like terrified, right? Now, I have to say, I saw my son, my youngest son, who was 13. That's him that's a younger picture, but that's him in the picture there. I saw him one time when I was in town about 3 weeks into it. So in the middle of June, I'm sitting in town having a slice of pizza, and he comes riding by with his friends on their bikes. And I thought he was going to drop his bike and come running over to me and hug me, you know? And instead, he dropped his bike, he turned his back, and he starts crying. Make her go away, make her go away. I don't want her to go to jail. I don't want her to get in trouble, make her go away. So these sick fucking psychopaths have tricked my children into believing that if they see me or they are with me in any way, that they're required. The cops are going to have to take me away to jail, right? Which is what they told them on June 5th. They said that I was going to be arrested for kidnapping if they went with me. But now this is giving me more evidence that it's like gone further than that. Because I'm thinking like my kids are going to call me in any minute. Like they love me. We're so super tight. There's no chance that they're going to like participate with this. But they realize that my sick, sadistic, sociopath husband gets them to participate because he says they're helping me. You have to help your mother. If you want to help your mother, you have to make her go into a psychiatric facility and go away. Otherwise, the cops are going to have to take her away. There's nothing I can do to help her. I'm trying to help your mother. This isn't going to end until your mother is away in a psychiatric facility. It's fucking sick. Sick. So anyways, in July, I saw my son. That happened. At the end of July, I see them for the first time. And this sick man is gaslighting and brainwashing my kids and telling them that he's going to end the visit, that I'm breaking the rules, that I'm not following court orders, that I'm not healthy. He won't let me talk to my kids when I'm trying to tell my kids that I'm well. And my oldest son is freaking out the most. And he's like, no, Mom, you're not well, Mom, you're not well. And now this was a kid on June 5th. First of all, during the 2 weeks that my husband was missing, I've never seen my kids happier. And that was so devastating for me. Because it made me realize how bad the abuse was, right? Because if it was nothing, they'd want to talk to him, right? Like they'd want to, and every day I'd be like, it's okay, guys, you can talk to him. Do you want to talk? And they're like, no. And it was like a weight had been lifted from their shoulder. Like I finally woke up. And I finally woke up and I was doing what I was supposed to protect them, right? So on June 5th, when I got evicted, my kids were crying and they were holding me. My youngest son went and got a stuffed animal. He was like rocking with a stuffed animal. No, Mommy, no. I don't want him to come back. Anyways, my oldest son on that day was like, if he comes anywhere near us, Mommy, I'm gonna kill him. I'll protect Ella and Jack. And I was like, thank you. And even the cops at the time, Officer Raphael said to me, he's like, Mrs. Weinstein, you know how we just spent 2 hours with you making sure that you were safe and everything was safe? We're going to do the same thing with your husband, so don't worry about it. I will not leave the kids here. I've got this. Like, I'm concerned too. I hear what you're saying, right? And so I believe them. And then I get the police video from that day on June 5th. And instead what the police did is they met Brian at the door. So he walks in and he looks like deranged. She's like, the children? Can I see the children? And they're like, yeah, sorry, Mr. Weinstein. God, it took forever to get out of here. Sorry about that. And they shook his hand and they walked out. They didn't watch him interact with the kids in any way. They didn't even, like, the kids wouldn't come out of the other room. You can hear them crying in the other room. So my son, who on June 5th is like, don't worry, we're gonna lock our doors at night. If he comes near us, we're gonna get him. Like, I won't let him touch my brother and sister. Don't worry, Mom. And I was like, thank you. Now, July 29th is sitting there in front of this guy telling me that he knows that I'm not well and that I'm not helping anybody by telling everybody that I'm well. Mom, you're only making it worse for everybody telling people that you're well. Mom, I mean, like, it's like, I can't explain as a mother to watch your children, like, your children are kidnapped by a pedophile. And then you're watching them be manipulated and mind fucked with. And literally you go to save them and the cops arrest you and the judges put you in jail and you're fucking poisoned. And this is America? Yeah. So on the 29th, my kid, I'm like, is there any reason you don't want to be with me? No, of course not, Mom. Of course we want to be with you. I'm like, okay. And because I was saying this, I wanted him to know. I wanted him to report back to them, right? Okay, I'm here. I still love you. And again, on July 3rd and 29th, I thought like, this is going to end soon. And we're going to bring this all home, right? My kids, were literally like holding on to me when they had to go back into the house. Don't make us go, Mommy. I don't want to leave you. And this guy is like, let her go. You gotta go. Let her go. Come on, guys. Come on. Let her go. And like, I still wonder, like, what if I just like took my kids then and like fucking drove to Canada or something, you know? But you don't know. Like, I just think, okay, now they're motivated. They're going to stand up for themselves. They're old enough, right? They're 17, 16, and 13. Like, they're going to stand up for themselves, and this is going to end now. But the abuse with the Bettina Thompson gets so bad that I stopped the phone calls. I'm like, I can't, this woman is just manipulating. She would end the calls. Like, my kids would be crying because they wanted to talk to me, and she'd like just end it. And they're like, no, Mommy. Because I would say, Bettina, don't speak to my children like that. And then she would end the call, and you would hear them like, Mommy, please, like, please just comply. Like, they're in a state of like fear. And so they're trying to force compliance because that's all they know. Like, when we comply, the abuse stops, right? That's what they think. So I say to them, I'm like, I can't do these phone calls anymore. I will not abuse my own children. You were gaslighting my children. You were bringing these disgusting pedophile supporters, all paid for by the pedophile, and handlers around my children, and I won't do it. I won't do it. So I had one last visit with my kids in September. And Gloria Marchetti Bruck, who is the disgusting lawyer for the children when the children don't need a lawyer, is going to the court and saying that the reports of these people say that she's not a good mom, so we shouldn't let her around the kids anymore, right? But I'm not allowed to get access to the reports. I can't see the reports. I can't mention the reports. I can't talk about it. And that's standard. That's just not about me. That's what all the courts do as it relates to getting access to the report. They hire these outside experts, and then that expert has more weight than my children. So my children can't be heard from directly, even though New York State says after 13 they have to be, and it's their wish to do, right? The judge stops doing all of that and instead has these people hired by my pedophile husband say whether or not my children can see me. And then this disgusting woman, I don't have a picture of her, but Gloria Marchetti Bruck goes to court and takes positions saying that she's representing the children, and then submits a bill which shows that she's never met with the children. So I had a hearing on March 10th and March 25th to get emergency access to the kids and to be able to see them over Christmas, right? I'm Christian, my husband's Jewish, Christmas is my holiday. She goes to the court and basically says like, no, we can't let that happen. I spoke with the children and the children don't want to be with her. Sorry. And then instead, minutes later, in January, a bill which shows that she never met with me. The court has all this.
Unbelievable.
So the last time I saw my kids then was in September. I saw them for this 1 hour visit, okay? Then the orders of protection expire the following day. And the orders of protection had expired, but I went to go to the house in September after the orders of protection expired. I get arrested even though there's no active orders of protection against me. I get arrested and pulled out of my home in front of my children, saying that I'm in violation of an order of protection when I have no orders of protection against me. Okay. So that was the last time. It was September. That was the last time I saw my kids. Then I haven't been able to speak with them. They don't text me, nothing. And again, it's that, like, the idea of how bad the abuse must be in order for them to be this compliant, right? Because these are kids that love me. We're so tight. So then I file motions after I get out of the psychiatric facility. I file motions to see my kids, and they prevent me from seeing the kids. They won't let me see them at all. And they schedule appointments and then cancel, then schedule appointments and then cancel. Then I get the new order of protection issued against me. That was on April 16th. And then after I get that new order of protection issued against me, I get a note from Gloria Marchetti Brock, hey, why don't we schedule a visit with the kids? So I'm terrified that that was another act of perfidy, that they just set that up to lure me in to arrest me again. But and I have to protect myself and do all of this stuff. I end up going and we have a visit with the kids with this guy. And my kids are robotic. Like, yes, they break down and they cry, but the other times they're like, Mom, this is not about custody. You should get help, Mom. This is not. And I'm like, what? I just underestimate the evil. I underestimate the mind control. I underestimate, like, the hold on it. All those years that I was parenting my children and teaching them to rely on themselves and be strong. I didn't understand that my husband was counter-parenting. He was abusing them and teaching them to be compliant and teaching them to be, to give in to their abuser and teaching them to doubt themselves, right? And now I know that the truth is, I know what the truth is. I know the children know what the truth is. And I know that the truth will come out, okay? But I just don't know how much pain they're gonna have to go through before we get to that point. Because everything that he's doing to them now, using the children against me, when the truth does come out for them, like when they wake up from the mind control and from the manipulation, and my oldest son is the most manipulated by him, and then my other two are much less so, but when they completely break free of all that and say, no fucking way, like, we're just gonna go see Mom because we can and there's nothing you can do about that. All of these times that they thought that they were helping me, that was actually hurting me, they have to contend with that too. You know what I mean? It's just a sick, twisted, parasitic parent that would ever use their children against another parent like this. And I say all the time, I say, listen, I want you to know something. You have a right to a relationship with both parents. And people are like, oh, that proves that he's not a pedophile because she wouldn't say that. And I'm like, no, I have a relationship with my pedophile father, but it's one that I control. I know the truth. I know what happens. And I can actually live in space with that man in my life in ways that I choose. Right? Because I know the truth. Because, yeah, the guy's a pedophile, but guess what? He was still my father too. And there are moments that he was helpful to me. Now, do I forgive him for his pedophilia? No, of course not, because he's never actually asked to be forgiven. He's never come to terms with it. He's never actually owned the shit that he's done, even though, like, it's egregious. But the point is, the relationship is there. It might be on hold. I might say, I'm not fucking talking to that guy right now because he's gross, but he's still my father. So I don't think people that even say, like, that guy's a pedophile, therefore I forbid you to ever talk to him again, and I don't even subscribe to that theory, because the children get to decide. The children have free will. They get to say, my dad abused me. He kidnapped and poisoned my mother. He put her in jail. He lied to us. He kicked her out of the house. He cut off all of her finances, but he's still my dad. And here's how I want to relate to him. They get to do that. That's not for me to tell them, but he's the one. He's the one that's like, no, you have to stay away from her because she's so dangerous. And why is she so dangerous? Because she knows I'm a pedophile. It's sick. It's sick. So I've talked her ear off.
What do we do now? What's the next step? How do we get?
Thank you. Well, the next step is education. I want everybody to be educated about the sheer fact that, number one, this issue of our courts being used to traffic children, especially our family courts, is not new to me. It's not unique to me. It's just Google it. Just look it up on whatever Firefox or whatever private server, DuckDuckGo you want to use. Google like court abuses, litigation abuse, judicial abuse, and it will be shocking to you. We have a case right now going on in Long Island where the child was trafficked to his abusive father and the father killed the child. Killed the child. The Valva case. Google it. It's horrific. And the court is saying, sorry, that was an unforeseeable thing, even though the mother had all the documented evidence of the abuse. But the dad was a cop and used the system. I have another case up in Albany right now, which is horrific. This guy, Luke Walker, is a registered sex offender. He got married to a woman by the name of Elisa. And, when they got married, he kind of like covered it up. He's like, oh, by the way, I want you to know I have to register, but like, there was nothing. I was 18, she was 16. Like, the dad got a little upset, nothing we could do about that. And she fell for it. And then lo and behold, comes to find out that's not at all what happened. This guy's a bad fucking dude. And he does a lot of bad things, including take pornographic images with adults with children. And he's with this woman, Sarah Miller. And he and Sarah Miller have a sex life. So when Elisa Walker separates from this guy, he goes to the court first and gets an order and files for divorce first to get his name listed as the plaintiff, right? Well, Elisa, of course, gets the children because he's a registered sex offender for years. Okay, not a new thing, for years. Okay, so she gets the children. Well, 6 months into it, Matthew Foley, who again is the lawyer for the children, but her children are young, so they would have an attorney for them representing their needs. Okay, they were young at the time. I think they were 4 and 6, or 3 and 5 at the time. This is in 2019. That he filed for divorce. They separate. He files for divorce, and then in May, Matthew Foley files a motion with the court to say, hey, court, you know what? Judge Charlakis, Elisa Walker is a Buddhist. And sometimes Buddhists don't like to bring their children to hospitals. So just in case she's ever going to do that, we should take her children away and give them to the registered sex offender. And the judge does it. The judge traffics the children to the registered sex offender father who's living with his girlfriend, who's an S&M madam, and their sex slave. Because the mother is a Buddhist. So the mother sues the judge in federal court because that is a violation of her constitutional rights to religious freedom. You can't say I can't be a parent because I'm a Buddhist. What are you talking about, right? So of course she's going to win, right? This is July 17th, 2020. Of course she's going to win. She loses. She loses. This is Walker versus Charlakis. Okay, you can look it up. You can Google it by the New York Law Journal. The New York Law Journal did a story about it.
That's my dog.
Yeah. Your dog is tuned in. Hi, baby. I can't even, the judge won't even let me see my dog. Won't even let me see my dog. So Charlakis and Matthew Foley are transferring children, trafficking them to registered sex offenders by religious discrimination, and they're getting away with it. So where do we go from here? Where we go from here is we wake up. We have to wake up to this idea that all of this is happening because these judges have judicial immunity. literally, not only do the judges have judicial immunity, but they say law guardians are entitled to quasi-judicial immunity for actions pertaining to the representation of a child in family court. No, they're not. What you're saying is that a litigator is actively involved in the judicial process. So then you're showing collusion between a judge and the litigator. It makes no sense, but that's what's happening. So where do we go from here? We educate ourselves. I've got a petition right now. What's going on? If you go, good. He's hitting on all the important parts.
There's a go walking around outside, and everybody listening, this is real life. It's my doggy.
Yeah, exactly. So if you go in my Instagram page at the top, there's a website, change.org, or if you search for me on change.org, Elizabeth Harding Weinstein, there are 2 petitions, but they're to wake people up to this idea of judicial immunity being a real
bio for everybody too, so that way you guys have easy access.
Great, and it's just an avenue for judicial tyranny. So if the judges can kidnap you, take your children away, poison you, take away all your belongings, take away your house, and you have no recourse because they've got immunity, we're just talking about tyranny, okay? So where I'm personally going in my case is I've got that federal case, and in my federal case, Kathy Seibel, who's the federal judge, and the federal case number, just so everybody has it, is 7-21-CV, that goes for Charlie Vegas, -01996CS for Kathy Seibel. If you Google that, or you go on casetext.com, you can print a download summary of it, okay? And you can get Kathy Seibel's orders, and you can look at what her summary of the case is, and then watch the actual video of the arrest itself. And you can see all the ways that she lies about it on the case. But people should know about that. Casetext.com. Casetext, T-E-X-T like Thomas.com, okay? So I have a case now, I'm bringing it to the Court of Appeals on the Second Circuit. Now the Second Circuit Court of Appeals is a very influential appellate court in our federal court systems, okay? And from there, what you would do is if you had disputed resolutions or differences in judiciary orders at the end of those, you can take that up to the Supreme Court. So the interesting little twist to all of this is that my husband, yes, see, it was so good. My husband served on the Second Circuit. Hi, BB. My husband was a clerk for the Second Circuit, and the judge that he clerked for, Judge Jose Cabranes, is actually on the Judicial Committee there now. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out as my case evolves up the line. But I'm taking my case to the Judicial, to the Second Circuit now. I am also bringing cases to the appellate court to challenge these unlawful orders of protection that were issued in an ex facto bill of retainer, right? That I was then immediately arrested on within 90 seconds of being issued, served to me by email. And I'm fighting. I have to wake up every day, and I have to know that, this has been a big problem. It's been going on for decades. It's not just my problem. I've got a father up in the Rochester area that is made to wear an ankle bracelet because one day when he had his daughter and it was her birthday, she had to get clothes from her home to get changed into from school. So he waited out, parked outside and let her run in and get clothes. And the mom said, you know what, that was upsetting to me. And so they arrested the father over Christmas, when he was supposed to see the children, and instead put him in jail for 5 days. And then when he got out, said, you have to be on house arrest from now on because it's really upsetting that you did that. You upset the mother. And again, never given a trial. But now he's got an ankle bracelet on him. And then when he has to work, he's a regional manager, he needs money to pay for his, to live. And he drove to the next town. They said he violated his order that he was never given a trial on. that was in violation of another order he was never given a trial on. It's sick.
It's so
These people
sad.
are, it's so sick. And so we need to wake up to the idea that this isn't some, I mean, Netflix did a series on it, Dirty John, right? And I think it was on one of the other Bravo or something like that, did a series on it. And we have to realize this is not communist China or Russia. This isn't even, you know, something that happened back in the 70s, but we're so on it now. No, like people are being kidnapped. Okay. We haven't even talked about like the people that are being kidnapped by going to a hospital. I have a woman up in Canada who was going to hospitals, and she had a medical emergency, so she was allowed in during the time of COVID, and all the hospitals were empty. And the way that the system works up in Canada is you're allowed to go to a different province if you need, if one isn't offered in your area. So she had been to several different hospitals in different provinces to see that this was all a big hoax, and that the hospitals that were claiming to be overwhelmed were empty. And so she started reporting about it. And then when she went to one of these hospitals, and they started like doing things that didn't feel right, and she felt like they were preying upon her and they were making stuff up, she then went to court. She then went to just leave against medical advice, and they tried to hold her against her will. They literally just kidnapped her at the hospital and wouldn't let her leave. There's also a video on my page of this happening to a woman up in Seattle. Back, I think it was the end of December, beginning of January. She's trying to leave the hospital with her daughter, and the police came and kidnapped her, wouldn't let her leave. This is happening now, and they're trying to silence us. They want to know, what can we do, and are they going to stand up and pay attention? If we falsely arrest them, will they pay attention? If we imprison them, will they even pay attention? If we commit them to a psychiatric hospital, will they stand up and fight? And so far, the resistance has been low. Like, I'm resisting, but like the outward community resistance has been low. And we have to understand that we are in a war right now, and our governments are coming to take over humanistic control and enslave us. And the sooner we stand up and fight against it, the less pain we have to go through. I know in the end we win this war. It's only a matter of how much time do we have to suffer before it gets so bad that we all stand up, you know? But it's been through hell and back, but you know, I don't question my own strength about anything anymore. Like, I'm like, bring it. Bring it. Like, what do you got?
Badass. Just even the way that you confront all of this, you have videos of Brian that you're actually confronting him, and
Yeah.
it's almost endearing how kind you are when everybody's sitting there saying, I just want to punch this guy after what he's done. And you're saying, I want to help you, Brian. I am here for you. I worry about you. I care about you. I love you. Like,
Just don't hurt us.
Yes.
Just don't fucking hurt us anymore.
100%.
He's a coward, and he's a fucking coward. And that coward lied to me. Yeah. And said that he would, and then evicted me, kidnapped me, shut off all my finances, left me sleeping in a car, left me sleeping in a sleeping bag. And then when that wasn't enough, falsely imprisoned me, the fucking parasite coward, poisoned me. He's a disgusting man. And you know what? Still rooting for his goodness, because that's what ends up making this go away. When we all fucking turn to our goodness and we oust our demons, that's when we get to go to move on to a better humanity. Everybody's like, oh, do you wish him dead? Do you wish him? I'm like, no, I wish him accountability. I wish him accountability and an honest, beautiful life. That's what I wish. And I know people that, you know, have talked about being murderers that found a second chance in prison. And they came into their own purposeful manifestation in life, you know? And I just waiting for him to turn to the same thing. But he's such a coward. He's such a fucking coward. I mean, the idea, I understand that he's been abused, but guess what? Just because you've been abused, I've been abused too. Not all people who've been abused choose to be abusers. And we're not victims. I'm a survivor of my father's abuse. I'm a survivor of it. I am not defined by the abuse that I suffered. I'm defined by how I respond to it. And I respond with unending, I can't even say the fucking words. I respond with this unwavering strength and unending commitment to integrity. Like what Brian wants me to do is lie for him. And I'm like, how about a no for me, dog, on that one? Like, how about no? I would have never, ever, ever given you any indication that that's who I am in life. Why would you think that that's who I would be now? And the only solution I come to in my mind is that that psychopath thinks that I knew all along and that I was going along with it and just playing a role. No, I didn't know. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I should have known. Maybe I know there was all those red flags, right?
No,
but
no. How many
I didn't know.
I want people to think about a relationship that you were in where afterwards you say, how did I fall for that guy? What did I see in him? And this could be just really minor. They might have lied about something that they bought, or maybe they cheated on you, right? Whenever you're dating in the first couple of months and you find out and you say, how didn't I see that in the moment? We never see it because these people are so good at disguising it. So it's not visible. It's on purpose.
Yeah.
Known that.
I put up these 3 videos of him gaslighting me. And even now when I put them up, I was still like, oh, people are going to think that I'm lying. People like, he's so good. He's so good at it because it is slow. He's so patient at grooming you. Okay. And so it's this twisted, you can see like, just even in this text it's such a great text of his gaslighting, because he just twist the logic around. So you're like, wait, what? Like, what's true? What's not true? And you hold on to the parts that you want to be true. So when they say, I love you and I'm trying to help you, you hold on to that. And you ignore the part that he's actually trying to fucking gaslight you and hurt your kids, right? When he says, anything, like I'm trying to act in your best interest. I mean, listen, this is just so great. Okay. I'm trying to act in your best interest. Now, again, this is when he had the marriage counselor call me and they were trying to FaceTime me together, but my husband's so idiotic with IT stuff. He didn't know how to get on the joint FaceTime, right? So he's like, I confront this guy and I'm like, wait a minute, why are you protecting a pedophile, Jeff? Why are you asking me to go to a mental hospital, Jeff? What's wrong with you, Jeff? Oh my God, you're actually a for-hire service. And then he hangs up on me. And then I'm like, and then Brian sends me, we have this thing, we fire Jeff, like everything happens. And then Brian sends me this ridiculous text. I'm trying to act in your best interest, but I agree that following Jeff's recommendation, which I did not do, would not have been in your best interest. I tried to deceive you because I thought you would draw the wrong conclusion that the fact that I was communicating with him meant that I agreed with his recommendation, which I didn't. And that's why I never tried to follow up. But you see, I tried to deceive you because it's your fault. Because you were going to draw the wrong conclusion, so you made me lie to you. Fucking guy. Fucking guy. And then listen, but then this is the Brian that I hold on to, that I want to think it's a true one that's going to come forward. But this to me shows his soul. I just ask him point blank, your interactions with Jeff are alarming. They express concern for my discovery, being my discovery that Jeff was protecting a pedophile, but Jeff did not exhibit concern for my health to me, nor would see me when I asked him to be seen. Can you acknowledge that this, Brian's interactions with Jeff and the way that they colluded, is a threat to me and the kids? Yes, thank you. And you're not being honest with your intentions. I saw the text that you wrote back and forth with Jeff. Can you acknowledge that you were not acting in my best interest? And he writes, yes. So like, this is what I hold on to. I'm like, see, there's goodness in him. His soul wants to come through. His soul wants to do the right thing. But what I have to remember is it's not up for me to choose a soul or demon. It's his call. And right now, he is firmly and happily choosing his demon. But I constantly remind him that his soul is there, and his soul is good, and his soul will protect him, and the truth will protect him. And he deserved to be protected as a kid. He did. But he's a fucking adult now, and he's responsible for his own decisions. And he's indoctrinating our children. He's indoctrinating our children in the same way he was indoctrinated, by denial, by falling in love with your abuser, by villainizing the people that are trying to protect the kids. You indoctrinate them into the practice. And that's fucking heart-wrenching for me to watch.
You're so brave. You're so brave for being able to talk about this and for talking about it and how vulnerable it is. And like you said, knowing that people will question you for telling your side of the story. And everybody listening, the best thing that you can do for a survivor, because I know every time I hear a story, I almost have anxiety thinking, what do I do? How can I help? Right? The best thing you can do to help, go support them. Visit the link that I'm going to link below. Follow Lizzie, share the story. She shares everything on her social media. Send her page to people. You can go through, look at her videos, go to the beginning of her page, watch her video. She has everything on there.
Yeah, it all starts, if you really want to go to the beginning, it starts, and this is another piece that we didn't touch on, is my husband has a huge vested interest in COVID. He has been pushing the COVID propaganda from the beginning. Now, he is a lawyer for Davis Polk, but he represents Morgan Stanley and some of the major banks in the mortgage-backed securities crisis of 2008. Okay. In early 2000s, my husband and one of his best friends, the chief legal officer of Morgan Stanley, Eric Grossman, took a trip to China, okay, together for weeks. And then they come back. Next thing we know, we have this whole crisis. My husband represents the banks, protects all of them. Then COVID happens, and my husband's vaccinate, get your masks, vaccinate, get your masks. And that's when I started posting. I was more publicly posting about anti-COVID stuff and trying to lift the shelter-in-place orders and highlight all of the abuses by Cuomo. And that's when my husband started coming out full force. Oh, you're bipolar. Oh, you're crazy. Oh, and I was like, no, motherfucker, you tried that back in 2013. And I left out an important thing. Remember I told you about the website Movie Star Planet in 2013? That's a pedophile phishing website. And that's linked to the International Child Refugee Organization, Save the Children. And again, I don't want people to believe me. I want you to go and look. It's on the Movie Star Planet website. Just go and look. Some guy, like, go and say, like, who we are. And it says, and he says, yeah, I work for Save the Children. Okay? Get into that site and you'll see what it does. Go Google, my child got molested or my child got sexually solicited on Movie Star Planet and see what pops up. It's a known pedophile phishing website. My husband's been on it. It was one of the sites that he was on. It was why he was freaking out so heavily in 2013 when I started speaking out about it. And I thought he was just freaking out because I was bringing up his own trauma. And he just didn't want to deal with it, right? Like, oh, he's freaking out that I'm talking about a pedophile phishing website because he was molested by a pedophile, and so he just doesn't want to confront his truth. No, that fucking sociopath was on the fucking website. And he goes by the username Jesse, Jessie, because that way he can be a little boy or a little girl. Pretty fucking sick, right?
It's unbelievable. And like you said, it's so vast and connected that people, they have a hard time believing that there could be some type of a collusion because we're so trained to think of everything separately.
I think people are breaking out of that. I really think people are understanding now, like when somebody, because it's called the Martha Mitchell effect. Martha Mitchell was the wife, she's either of the attorney general, I always forget, either the attorney general or a senator. right around the time of Watergate, right? She was a Southern belle, and she used to like go around and do her governmental duties during the day, throw back a little cocktail, get a little tipsy, and then call all of the reporters and give them true reports of what was really going on in Washington. So now all the Washington insiders hated her because she was disclosing all the secrets. But America and the press loved her because she was a good source of information. Well, she started reporting about Watergate. And literally, her husband had her kidnapped. Sound familiar? And guess where he had her sent to? Silver Hill in Connecticut. Tried to have her admitted to Silver Hill. And then she was saying, listen, this is what's going on. I'm not crazy. She starts talking about Watergate. And she's like, and I've been kidnapped. And then Martha Mitchell effect is when somebody calls you crazy, just because the story seems so incredible, and it's their way of discounting you so they don't have to pay attention to the truth. It's so common, there's already a name for it. So this idea that all somebody has to do is say you're a conspiracy theorist, say that you're crazy, or say that you're selfish, and they can get you to change your mind or stop talking about the truth, is obscene. And I think we've all been living under like a cloud of that for a while. And now people are like, oh, really? You think I'm crazy? What do you like, pedophiles? Oh, you think I'm bipolar, huh? That's interesting. Tell me more about it. Because nobody calls me crazy unless they've got something to hide from me, unless they're threatened by me. And I'm not threatening to anybody unless you're a pedophile or you're corrupt. That's it. Nobody, I love everybody. Nobody's threatened by me. So like now when somebody talks about conspiracy theorists or crazy or selfish, any of those things, I lean in because those are people with something to hide. And I think the American public at least is waking up to and internationally, people are waking up to the idea like, yeah, guess what? A conspiracy theory is somebody who theorizes about the ways that people commit mass atrocities. Yeah, I'm able to connect the dots. And when people connect the dots quicker than other people, like Albert Einstein does, right? Like any of our great scientists do, we call them geniuses. But when you do it about crimes, we try and call you a conspiracy theorist because just when we call you that, you'll feel bad about yourself and stop doing it. People know that it's stupid now. They don't pay attention to it. So.
Well, it takes voices like yours to wake people up, and people listening, you're going to find way more than just her story. She goes into a lot of this on her page too. And just the information that you're going to find, Lizzie's page is like a giant red pill. So go take every little, every video, every post is like taking a piece of a red pill, and her whole page makes the whole pill. So please go connect with her. Lizzie, let everybody know where they can connect with you. I'll link it all below.
Yes. And listen, if I can make this one, please. So yes, sign my petition, but also, I'm kind of this thing of wave convergence when basically two waves come together, and sometimes they cancel each other out, and sometimes they just absorb at the same thing, and sometimes waves come together and they double their momentum. Okay, I think that we are at a point in our humanity where we've got this wave convergence where we're joining together and we're elevating, okay? And so my story isn't just my story. There are people in your area, wherever you are in the world, that need help. And if you can't find them, contact me directly and I will help you find them. I've got a whole war room over here with a map, with little pins where all the people are that have been calling me, where this stuff is happening to them. And what we need is people to stand up and show up. We need simple things like a court watcher, which I didn't know what that was previously, but all you would do is you would sit in on a Zoom court call, and you could document if you saw any impropriety, if you saw coercion, if you saw bias by the judge, if you saw that somebody's rights were being taken away or they weren't being allowed to speak. You can document all of that, okay? These things matter. We have to take all of this darkness and call it into light. And then we have to remind people that they're humans. And this is a choice. It's a choice for that judge to be evil and to make a decision that hurts people. It's a choice for that judge to abuse their power. And they can make better choices at any time. And so if you really want to get involved, please sign the petition. Please educate yourself. Don't just speak blindly. Go through, look at the videos, look at the evidence. I saved in my Instagram, there are these circles of saved stories. All of the false arrests and the kidnappings are up there, okay? There are more false arrests than I can put up there. But the big ones, and where I was put in solitary confinement, and then when I was put in the mental hospital, the kidnappings, those are all up at the top for easy access to people. And if you want to deep dive, start back in May of last year, but then get involved, find other programs in your area. If you start looking at people who are doing like mask-free programs in your area, they're likely to have an open mind to these types of things that are happening and can help tell you where your time can be most valuable. I want to alert you that anybody that asks for money, you have to consider that that right may be their intent. Doesn't mean it is, doesn't mean it isn't. But the true value, the true worth, the true currency here is not money, it's karma. And it's what we're putting into the universe, okay? So spend your time doing good things. Spend your time helping people in your area, and every little bit contributes to the whole, and we'll get through this. Again, I know we win this war. It's just a matter of how long it takes us to stand up and fight. And so let's just go. Let's just get to it.
Gosh, that's so powerful. And I appreciate you so much coming on here and
Mwah.
sharing your
Thank
voice.
you for having me.
You're speaking for victims and you're speaking for advocates and activists, survivors all at the same time. And you're so powerful. I admire you. And like I said, I encourage everybody, please, please, please share Lizzie's content. It doesn't take a lot. Share it to your story on Instagram. Send it to a friend you're comfortable with. All these little things add up. And as Lizzie said, you create a wave and more people jump in, start spreading the news to where we become the news and it's not dominated by our TVs.
Correct. That's the last point we should leave people with, is everybody's like, how have I not heard of that? We know that the media is biased, right? But we still have this indoctrinated thought that if it was really important, that first arrest where I was put into prison happened in January. Okay, January. It's April. It's May. It's May. And people are just hearing about it now. We have to realize that it's not, and we have this like also indoctrinated thought that like, you know, viral things go viral in a day and it's done, right? Well, I don't know. I mean, first and foremost, you should know that even like Project Veritas, you know, all of these new news medias that are supposed to be different, they know about my story. They've seen my videos, never ran once. What are they running stories about? Pay attention. They're running stories about themselves. They're running stories about being victimized by the New York Times coming down on Project Veritas. Well, that's just another wing of the same bird. You understand? So we have to really look for all these false flags, because they don't care if we stop fighting because we're so fucking scared we hide in the corner, or they don't care if we stop fighting because we think somebody like Linwood is going to fight for us and come out and fight for us. So we don't have to do anything. All they care about is that we stop fighting. So don't do it. Stand up, create your little bit of resistance, add to the wave, get involved. It feels good for your soul anyways, and it's so much more valuable than any money. So don't ever, even when people go on change.org, there's something on there where you can donate and then that'll get me more publicity. Don't do it. I don't want you to do it. What I want you to do instead is say, I'm going to get 10 signatures and I'm going to ask 10 people to get 10 signatures, right? Like that's the value. Just our own contributions to humanity. So.
Gosh, I couldn't have said that better myself. Lizzie, thank you so much. We will be doing episodes for you guys. So feel free, reach out to her, ask questions that you want to know, reach out to me.
Yes.
Subscribe, share. And Lizzie, thank you so much, girl. I hope you have the best day and I look forward to connecting again.
Thank you so much, babe. I'll let you know how this goes with my federal case, because I've got some decisions coming in the next couple of weeks.
We'll have another episode to do after that.
Bye, babe.
Bye.